Hello friends. Did you know nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy these stories, please hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It really helps. Thank you for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I've been in the trucking business in the western states for about 18 years. I started when I was old enough to get my Class A license. I came from such a small place that there weren't even traffic lights there. My name is Cole Briggs, and I've seen every kind of road this country has to offer. In January, on mountain passes where the ice is so thick, you can hear the cracking sounds under your tires. On the flat plains of the desert, the heat makes the asphalt shine like glass and deceives your eyes. On the highways along the coast, the fog is so thick that you drive blindly, relying only on the faint light of the reflectors and your own instincts. But there's one route I only drove once. One route that still wakes me up some nights, makes me sit bolt upright in whatever motel bed I'm in, sweating through the sheets even when the AC is cranked so high I can see my breath. They call it the Grayson Canyon Haul. Or at least that's what the old-timers call it when they're willing to talk about it at all. Most truckers won't even mention it by name. They'll just shake their heads when someone brings up that stretch of highway, make some excuse about needing to check their logbook or refill their coffee, and walk away. I should have paid more attention to that. I should have asked more questions. But I didn't. And that's how I ended up on that road on a Tuesday night in late October, hauling a load of industrial equipment from Reno to a distribution center outside of Flagstaff. The dispatcher who gave me the route was new. I could tell by the way she stumbled over the highway numbers, the way she had to check and recheck the GPS coordinates before sending them to my onboard system. Her name was Jessica, I think, or Jennifer. Something that started with a J. She had that nervous energy that new dispatchers always have. Like they're waiting for someone to tell them they've made a terrible mistake. The usual I-80 to I-15 route is backed up, she'd said, her voice crackling through my phone speaker. Major accident near Salt Lake. They're saying it could be 12 hours before they clear it. I was sitting in a truck stop outside Reno, watching the sun sink behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that were almost too pretty to be real. My coffee had gone cold in the cup holder, but I took a sip anyway, grimacing at the bitter taste. 12 hours? I said. That'll put me way behind schedule. I know, she said, and I could hear her clicking through something on her computer. But I found an alternate route. It's actually shorter, mileage-wise. Cuts straight through some canyon country, but it should save you 4, maybe 5 hours. That should have been my first warning. In 18 years of driving, I've learned that shortcuts are never really shortcuts. There's always a reason the main routes are the main routes. Always a reason why everyone takes the same roads, even when they're backed up, even when they're slow. What's the route? I asked. She gave me the highway numbers, SR 447 North, then a county road that didn't even have a proper name, just a designation, County Road 34. Then back to another state route that would eventually connect to I-40. County Road 34, I repeated. Never heard of it. It's not heavily trafficked, she admitted. But it's paved, it's maintained, and according to the GPS, it's clear. No construction, no closures. I should have said no. Should have told her I'd wait out the backup, catch some sleep, and run the normal route when it cleared. But I was trying to make a payment on a new rig, and every late delivery meant money out of my pocket. The company didn't care about accidents or backups, or any of the 100 other things that could slow you down. They cared about on-time delivery, and that was it. All right, I said, send me the route. Sending it now, she said, and I heard the relief in her voice. One less problem for her to deal with. One less angry driver calling back every hour, asking for updates. "Drive safe, Cole." "Always do," I said, and ended the call. The route appeared on my GPS a few seconds later, a thin red line cutting through a whole lot of nothing. I zoomed in, trying to get a sense of what I was looking at. The canyon area looked deep, narrow, the kind of place where the rock walls rise up on either side and you can't see the sky anymore, just a thin strip of black overhead. The kind of place where your headlights don't do much good because they just bounce off the stone and blind you. But it was paved. It was maintained, and it was faster. I finished my coffee, started the engine, and pulled out of the truck stop. The sun was almost gone now, just a faint glow on the horizon. I flipped on my headlights and merged onto SR 447, heading north into the gathering dark. For the first hour, everything was fine, normal. The road was decent, 2 lanes with a faded yellow line down the middle. There wasn't much traffic, just the occasional car passing in the opposite direction. Headlights flaring in my mirrors and then fading away. The desert stretched out on either side, flat and featureless, dotted with the sagebrush and the occasional Joshua tree standing like a sentinel against the darkening sky. I had the CB radio on, tuned to channel 19, listening to the chatter. Truckers talking about weather, road conditions, where the highway patrol was hiding. Someone was complaining about the price of diesel. Someone else was recommending a diner in Winnemucca that served breakfast all day. Normal stuff. Familiar voices in the dark, making the road feel a little less lonely. Then I hit the turnoff for County Road 34, and everything changed. The road narrowed immediately, dropping from 2 full lanes to barely 1.5. The pavement was still good, smooth under my tires, but the shoulders disappeared. On my right, a rock wall rose up, dark and jagged. On my left, nothing. Just a drop-off into blackness so complete I couldn't see the bottom. My headlights swept across the cliff face as I took the first curve, illuminating striated layers of stone that looked ancient, prehistoric. The CB radio crackled, voices fading in and out, breaking up into static. I adjusted the squelch, but it didn't help. Whatever I was driving into, it was cutting off my signal. That wasn't unusual in canyon country, but it still made me uneasy. I liked having the radio on, liked hearing those voices. Without them, the silence felt heavier. I kept driving, following the GPS as it guided me deeper into the canyon. The road twisted and turned, following the contours of the rock. My speed dropped to 30, then 25. Any faster, and I'd be taking these curves too hot, risking a slide that would send me right over that edge. I tried not to think about how far the drop was. Tried not to imagine my rig tumbling end over end into that darkness, metal screaming, glass shattering. That's when I saw the first sign. It was an old highway marker, the kind that used to be common but you don't see much anymore. Faded green with white lettering. It was planted on the shoulder, half hidden by a scrub bush, and my headlights caught it for just a second as I passed. Grayson Canyon, next 47 miles extreme caution. 47 miles. I checked my GPS. According to the route, I had about 50 miles of this county road before I'd hit the next state route. So, this was it. This was Grayson Canyon. I picked up my CB handset, keyed the mic. Breaker 19, this is Lone Star heading south on County Road 34. Anybody out there familiar with Grayson Canyon? Over. Static, just pure white noise, broken up by the occasional electronic squeal. I tried again, but got the same result. My signal wasn't reaching anyone. I was alone. The canyon walls grew higher on both sides now, closing in. It felt like driving through a tunnel, except there was no roof, just that thin strip of sky overhead. And even that was disappearing as the walls leaned inward, blocking out the stars. My headlights seemed dimmer somehow, like the darkness here was thicker, harder to penetrate. I glanced at my fuel gauge, 3/4 full, plenty to get through this stretch and then some. I checked my mirrors, seeing nothing but my own running lights reflected back at me from the rock walls. Empty road behind. Empty road ahead. Just me and the canyon and the sound of my engine echoing off the stone. That's when I noticed the time. My dashboard clock read 9:47 p.m. But that couldn't be right. I'd left the truck stop at 7:30, and I'd been driving for what felt like maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours tops. The clock should have read 9 o'clock, 9:30 at the latest. I checked my watch, the old analog one my father gave me when I got my first truck. It read 9:11 p.m. I stared at both timepieces, trying to make sense of the discrepancy. The dashboard clock was digital, precise. It synced with GPS satellites. It shouldn't be wrong. But my watch was mechanical, reliable. I'd had it serviced just 6 months ago. 17 minutes. Somehow, I'd lost 17 minutes. I told myself it was nothing. Told myself I'd just lost track of time, gotten absorbed in driving, maybe zoned out for a few minutes on one of the straighter stretches. It happens to every driver. You blink and suddenly you're 5 miles down the road with no memory of how you got there. Highway hypnosis, they call it. It's common. It's normal. But I'd been paying attention. I'd been counting curves, watching the mile markers. I hadn't zoned out. I knew I hadn't. The road descended now, dropping deeper into the canyon. My ears popped from the elevation change. The temperature dropped too, cold air seeping in through the vents despite the heater being on. I could see my breath misting in the glow of the dashboard lights. Another sign flashed past, this one hand-painted on a piece of plywood nailed to a post. No services next 40 miles. 40 miles. I did the math in my head. At 25 miles per hour, that was almost 2 hours of driving through this canyon. 2 hours of nothing but rock walls and darkness, and that narrow strip of road balanced on the edge of oblivion. I settled in, adjusted my seat, cracked my window to let in some air to keep me alert. The cold rushed in, sharp and clean, carrying a smell I couldn't quite place. Not unpleasant, but strange, mineral, maybe. Like rain on hot rocks, even though it hadn't rained. The CB crackled again, and for just a second, I thought I heard a voice. Not words exactly, but something that might have been a voice underneath all that static. I turned up the volume, listening hard. "Don't," the word cut through, clear as day, then dissolved back into noise. I grabbed the handset. "This is Lone Star on County Road 34. I read you broken and unreadable. Can you repeat? Over?" Nothing. Just static, rising and falling like breathing. "If anyone can hear me, I'm running Grayson Canyon southbound. Please respond. Over." The static changed pitch, became almost rhythmic, and underneath it, so faint I might have imagined it, I heard what sounded like, "Turn back." My hand tightened on the steering wheel. "Say again, over." But the voice, if it had been a voice at all, was gone. Just static remained, constant and unchanging. I hung up the handset and focused on the road. The canyon was getting deeper, the walls higher. I could feel the weight of all that stone pressing in, could feel the darkness like a physical presence. My headlights carved a tunnel through it, but it felt temporary, fragile, like the dark was just waiting for my lights to fail so it could rush in and swallow me whole. A mile marker appeared. 34. According to my GPS, I'd traveled 8 miles on this road. 39 miles to go. I checked the clock again. 10:03 p.m. My watch, 9:24 p.m. The gap was widening. That's when I saw the other truck. It was just a flash at first, taillights in the distance, red dots glowing in my headlights. Another truck, heading the same direction I was. Relief washed over me. I wasn't alone out here. There was someone else, someone who knew this road, who could maybe tell me what I was getting into. I accelerated slightly, trying to close the distance. The other truck's lights grew brighter as I approached. It was a big rig like mine, maybe slightly older model. I couldn't make out the company logo, but I could see it was hauling a covered load, the trailer swaying slightly as it navigated the curves. I flashed my headlights, the trucker's equivalent of a friendly wave. The other truck didn't respond, didn't flash back, didn't tap the brakes in acknowledgement, just kept moving at that same steady pace. I tried the CB again. "Breaker 19, this is the truck coming up behind you in Grayson Canyon. You got your ears on? Over." Static. I got closer. Close enough to read the license plate. Arizona tags. The trailer was unmarked, no company name, just a plain white covering stretched tight over whatever was inside. Something about it bothered me, but I couldn't put my finger on what. The other truck took a curve, and I followed, my headlights sweeping across the canyon wall. For just a second in that sweep of light, I saw something carved into the rock. Letters, maybe 3 feet tall, cut deep into the stone. "Turn back." I craned my neck, trying to see more, but I was already past it, the curve taking me in a different direction. Had I really seen that? Or was my tired mind playing tricks, turning random cracks and shadows into words? I looked ahead at the other truck, using it as an anchor, something real and solid to focus on. But even as I watched, it seemed to flicker like a bad TV signal. There 1 second, gone the next, then back again. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes. Fatigue. Had to be fatigue. I'd been driving for hours, and the stress of this unfamiliar road was getting to me. I needed to stay focused, stay alert. The other truck rounded another curve and disappeared from view. I followed, expecting to see it on the straightaway on the other side. But the road ahead was empty. No taillights. No truck. Nothing but darkness and that narrow strip of pavement. I slowed down, confused. There was nowhere for it to go. No turnoffs. No wide spots where it could have pulled over. The road was barely wide enough for one truck, let alone space for one to pass or disappear. I drove another quarter mile, scanning the road ahead, checking my mirrors. Nothing. The other truck was just gone, like it had never been there at all. My hands were shaking on the wheel. I told myself to calm down, told myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe there was a turnoff I'd missed in the dark. Maybe the other driver had killed his lights for some reason and I'd passed him without realizing it. But I knew that wasn't true. I knew what I'd seen, and I knew it had vanished. The CB crackled again, and this time the voice was clearer. "Following you." I grabbed the handset so hard my knuckles went white. "Who is this?" "What do you mean, following me?" The voice dissolved into laughter. Or maybe it was just static that sounded like laughter. Then, "Behind you." Always behind. I checked my mirrors. Empty road. Nothing but my own reflection in the glass, my face pale and drawn in the dim glow of the running lights. "This is Lone Star," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Identify yourself, over." Silence. Complete and total. Even the static was gone. I hung up the handset and focused on driving. My heart was hammering in my chest, and I could feel sweat trickling down my back despite the cold. Something was wrong with this road. Something was very wrong. The GPS showed I was making progress, the red line slowly advancing toward the end point. But the mile markers told a different story. I'd been driving for what felt like 30 minutes since seeing that last marker, but the next one I passed still read 34. Same number, same marker. I'd driven in a complete circle, or the markers were wrong, or something else was happening that I couldn't explain. I thought about turning around, but the road was too narrow. There was nowhere to make a U-turn, nowhere to reverse a 53-foot trailer. I was committed now. The only way out was forward. The canyon walls seemed to be moving closer, leaning in like they were trying to see me better. I could hear wind now, whistling through the rocks, making sounds that were almost like voices, almost like words. But when I tried to focus on them, tried to make out what they were saying, they slipped away into just noise. My dashboard clock read 11:47 p.m. My watch read 9:58 p.m. Nearly 2 hours of difference now. Time was breaking down, coming apart at the seams. And then I saw the rest stop. It appeared suddenly, a small pullout carved into the rock on the right side of the road. There was a single light pole, the bulb flickering weakly, casting a sickly yellow glow over a picnic table and a trash can. A wooden sign read, "Grayson Canyon Rest Area." I almost kept driving. Every instinct told me to keep moving, to not stop, to get through this canyon as fast as possible. But I'd been driving for hours, and I needed to clear my head, needed a minute to think, to figure out what was happening. I pulled into the rest area, my air brakes hissing in the silence. The engine idled, a comforting rumble that was the only sound besides the wind. I sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, staring out at that flickering light. Then I saw the logbook. It was sitting on the picnic table, a standard driver's logbook, the kind every trucker is required to keep. It was open, pages fluttering in the wind, and even from inside my cab I could see writing on the pages. Fresh writing, recent. I shouldn't have gotten out. I know that now. Should have put the truck in gear and driven away, rest stop or no rest stop. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and I needed to know. Needed to understand what was happening to me. I opened the door and climbed down, my boots crunching on the gravel. The cold hit me immediately, colder than it should have been for October. My breath came out in thick clouds. I walked towards the picnic table, each step feeling heavier than the last. The logbook was real, solid. I picked it up, the pages rough under my fingers. The writing inside was shaky, desperate. Different handwriting, different people. Pages and pages of entries, all from different drivers, all saying variations of the same thing. Lost track of time, can't find the end. Driving in circles. The walls are watching. I can feel them watching. Saw another truck. It wasn't real. None of this is real. Day 3 in the canyon. Fuel gauge hasn't moved. Clock doesn't make sense. Where does this road go? Turn back. If you can read this, turn back. Don't trust the GPS. Don't trust the signs. Get out while you can. The last entry was dated 2 days ago. Just 2 days. The handwriting was nearly illegible, scrawled across the page in what might have been blood or just very dark ink. They don't want us to leave. The canyon doesn't let go. I'm sorry I came here. I'm sorry I didn't listen. I dropped the logbook, and it hit the table with a sound that seemed too loud, echoing off the canyon walls. My truck's engine was still running, the headlights cutting through the darkness. And for a second I was grateful for those lights, for that noise, for anything that felt normal and real. Then I heard the footsteps. They were coming from deeper in the rest area, from a path that led into the rocks. Slow, deliberate footsteps, boots on stone, coming closer. I ran. Didn't think, didn't look back, just ran for my truck. I grabbed the door handle, hauled myself up into the cab, slammed the door, and locked it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely put the truck in gear. The footsteps stopped right outside my window. I didn't look, couldn't look. I kept my eyes straight ahead, on the road, on the headlights, on anything except the window where I could sense something standing, something waiting. I hit the accelerator and the truck lurched forward, tires spitting gravel. I pulled back onto the road and didn't slow down. didn't look in my mirrors, just focused on putting distance between me and that rest stop. But as I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had been standing outside my window was still there, still watching, still waiting, and that I'd only made it angry by leaving. The road descended further into the canyon, steeper now, the grade sharp enough that I had to downshift and let the engine brake to keep my speed under control. My headlights caught the edge of the drop-off to my left, and for a brief, stomach-churning moment, I could see just how far down it went. Hundreds of feet, maybe more. The bottom was lost in shadow so deep it looked like the earth had been torn open to reveal nothing but void. I forced my eyes back to the road, back to that narrow strip of pavement that was the only thing between me and that drop. My hands ached from gripping the wheel so tight, but I couldn't make myself relax. Every muscle in my body was wound tight as a spring. The dashboard clock now read 1:23 a.m. My watch stubbornly insisted it was only 10:17 p.m. 3 hours and 6 minutes of difference. Time was accelerating, or my watch had stopped, or something fundamental about how time worked had broken down in this canyon. None of the possibilities were comforting. I tried the CB again, more out of desperation than any real hope of getting through. This is Lone Star on County Road 34, Grayson Canyon. If anyone can hear me, I need assistance. My GPS is showing I'm making progress, but I'm not seeing any end to this canyon. Please respond. Over. The static that came back was different now. It had a rhythm to it, a pulse, like a heartbeat. And underneath that pulse, I could hear something else. Not quite music, not quite voice, something in between. It rose and fell, weaving in and out of the static, and the longer I listened, the more it sounded like words. Like someone was trying very hard to tell me something, but the signal kept breaking up, kept dissolving into noise. I turned the volume down until it was barely audible. I didn't want to hear what those voices might be saying. Didn't want to know. The temperature in the cab kept dropping despite the heater running full blast. I could see frost forming on the inside of the passenger window, delicate crystalline patterns spreading across the glass like reaching fingers. My breath came out in clouds so thick I could barely see through them. A new sign appeared in my headlights. Falling rock zone, next 15 miles. As if to emphasize the point, a stone the size of my fist bounced across the road just ahead of me, thrown down from somewhere high above. Then another and another. I slowed down, hearing the rocks ping and clatter off the trailer behind me. One hit the windshield and I flinched, but the glass held. A spiderweb crack appeared where it had impacted, right at eye level. The rocks kept falling, a steady rain of stone. I wanted to stop, to wait it out, but there was nowhere to pull over. The road was too narrow, the shoulders non-existent. I had no choice but to keep moving, to drive through it and hope nothing big enough to do real damage came down. Through the cracked windshield, I watched the canyon walls. They seemed different now. The rock face wasn't smooth anymore. It was rough, pitted, and in the sweep of my headlights those pits looked like eyes. Hundreds of them, thousands, watching me pass. I knew it was just shadows and stone, just my exhausted mind finding patterns where none existed. But knowing that didn't make it any less unsettling. The falling rocks finally stopped, and I allowed myself to breathe again. The silence that followed felt oppressive, heavy. I could hear every sound my truck made, every creak and groan of metal, every hiss of air through the vents. It was too quiet. Even the wind had died down. That's when I noticed the mileage. My trip odometer, the one I'd reset when I entered County Road 34, read 47.3 miles. According to the GPS, I'd traveled 38.2 miles. A 9-mile discrepancy. I was driving further than the GPS thought I was, or the odometer was broken, or the road itself was longer than the maps showed. I thought about the logbook I'd seen at the rest stop, about that entry that mentioned day 3. Day 3 of driving through a canyon that was supposed to be less than 50 miles long. How was that possible? How could someone spend 3 days on a road you should be able to drive in 2 hours? Unless the road didn't want to let them go. I shook my head, trying to clear it. That was crazy thinking. Roads don't want things. They don't have desires or intentions. They're just pavement and stone, nothing more. I was tired, stressed, seeing patterns that weren't there, making connections that didn't exist. But the evidence was piling up. The missing time, the vanishing truck, the conflicting measurements, the messages in the logbook. Something was wrong with Grayson Canyon, whether I wanted to believe it or not. My fuel gauge caught my attention. It still read 3/4 full, exactly where it had been when I entered the canyon hours ago. I'd been driving for hours at a moderate speed, the engine working hard to navigate these grades and curves. I should have burned through at least 1/8 of a tank by now, maybe more. But the needle hadn't moved, not even a fraction. I tapped the gauge, wondering if it was stuck. The needle quivered but stayed put, 3/4, same as before. A thought occurred to me, dark and unwelcome. If the fuel gauge wasn't moving, if time wasn't passing normally, if distance wasn't being measured correctly, then maybe I wasn't actually moving at all. Maybe I was just sitting here, engine running, going nowhere, while something played with my perceptions, made me think I was driving when I wasn't. But I could feel the road under my tires, could feel the truck responding to the wheel, could see the canyon walls sliding past. I was moving, I had to be moving, unless moving didn't mean what I thought it meant anymore. The road leveled out briefly, giving me a short straightaway. I could see maybe 1/4 mile ahead, the headlights reaching as far as they could into the darkness. And there, at the very edge of that light, I saw something that made my blood run cold. It was the rest stop, the same rest stop I'd fled from earlier. Same flickering light pole, same picnic table, same trash can. I'd been driving for over an hour since leaving that place, had covered at least 20 miles according to my odometer. There was no way I should be seeing it again, but there it was, unmistakable. I didn't slow down, didn't even consider stopping. I kept my foot steady on the accelerator and watched as the rest stop approached, my heart hammering in my chest. As I passed, I couldn't help but glance over. The logbook was still on the table, but now it was closed. And standing next to the table, barely visible in that weak yellow light, was a figure. Just a silhouette, dark and indistinct, too far away to make out any details. But I knew it was watching me, could feel its gaze as surely as I could feel the steering wheel under my hands. It didn't move as I passed, didn't wave or gesture or do anything at all, just stood there watching. I pressed the accelerator harder, my speed creeping up to 40, 45. Too fast for these curves, but I didn't care. I needed to put distance between me and that thing, needed to get away. The rest stop disappeared in my mirrors, swallowed by darkness. But the image of that figure stayed with me, burned into my mind. Who was it? What was it? And why was it just standing there? The questions chased each other in circles, unanswerable. A new sound joined the constant rumble of the engine. It was faint at first, barely audible, but it grew steadily louder, a scraping sound like metal on stone. It was coming from somewhere behind me, from the trailer. I checked my mirrors, trying to see what was causing it, but the running lights on the trailer didn't illuminate enough. Just a faint red glow, and beyond that, nothing but darkness. The scraping continued, rhythmic and deliberate, like something was dragging itself along the side of the trailer, using the metal to pull itself forward. I told myself it was just the wind, or loose cargo shifting, or a piece of equipment that had come loose. But I didn't believe it. The sound was too purposeful, too consistent. I thought about stopping to check, but the memory of that figure at the rest stop was too fresh. Whatever was making that noise, I didn't want to see it, didn't want to know. I just wanted to get out of this canyon, back to normal roads with lights and traffic and other people. The scraping stopped as suddenly as it had started. The silence that followed was somehow worse. At least when I could hear it, I knew where it was, what it was doing. Now, it could be anywhere. Could be climbing onto the cab. Could be right outside my door. I kept driving, eyes flicking between the road and the mirrors, watching for any sign of movement. But I saw nothing. Just my own pale face reflected back at me, eyes too wide, skin too pale. The canyon walls were closing in again, narrower than before. I had maybe 3 feet of clearance on either side. One wrong move, one overcorrection, and I'd scrape the trailer against stone or go over the edge. I had to focus, had to keep my hands steady. But focus was getting harder. I was exhausted, running on nothing but adrenaline and fear. My eyes kept trying to close, my head kept nodding forward. I slapped myself, hard, trying to jolt myself awake. It helped for a moment, but the fatigue crept back in. I reached for my coffee thermos, desperate for caffeine, but it was empty. Had been empty since before I entered the canyon. I'd meant to refill it at that truck stop in Reno, but I'd forgotten. Stupid mistake. I thought about the smelling salts some truckers carried, the ones that would jolt you awake with a sharp chemical burn in your nose. I'd never needed them before, had always been able to power through with coffee and willpower. But I wished I had some now. The road turned sharply to the right, and I followed it, the trailer swinging wide. As I came out of the turn, my headlights swept across something carved into the canyon wall. More words, cut deep into the stone. Mile 34, I'd seen that before, hours ago. But according to my GPS, I was at mile 41. According to my odometer, I was at mile 52. The markers, the GPS, the odometer, none of them agreed. None of them made sense. I was driving in circles, had to be. The road was looping back on itself somehow, bringing me past the same markers, the same rest stop, the same carvings. But that didn't make sense either. I hadn't made any turns that would bring me around in a circle. The road had been winding, yes, but always generally heading south, always descending. Unless south didn't mean the same thing here. Unless direction was as broken as time and distance. The CB crackled again, and this time a voice came through clear as day, no static at all. Cole Briggs. I grabbed the handset, my hand shaking. Who is this? How do you know my name? You shouldn't have come here, Cole. The voice was calm, almost sad. It sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. Nobody should come here. Where is here? I demanded. What is this place? Grayson Canyon, the voice said. But you know that already. What you don't know is why it's called that. What you don't know is what happened here. Then tell me, I said. Tell me how to get out. There is no out, the voice said. There's only through. And through means going deeper. Deeper than you want to go. Deeper than anyone should go. That's not good enough, I said, my voice rising. Give me real answers. Tell me what I'm dealing with. The voice laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want answers? Fine. 83 years ago, they tried to build this road. Crew of 30 men. They brought in explosives, heavy equipment, everything they needed. Took them 2 years to carve this canyon route. 2 years of blasting and digging and paving. I listened, The handset pressed so hard against my ear it hurt. The crew started experiencing problems after the first year, the voice continued. Tools going missing, equipment breaking down, men swearing they saw things in the rocks, heard voices calling their names. Management thought it was just stress, isolation. They brought in doctors, psychiatrists. Didn't help. What happened to them? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. They disappeared, the voice said flatly. All 30 of them, one by one, over the course of a month. Some left notes, said they were going into the canyon to investigate something. Some just vanished from their tents in the middle of the night. Search parties found nothing. No bodies, no evidence, nothing. And the road? The state finished it anyway. Brought in a new crew, completed the project. Opened it to traffic in 1947. But drivers started reporting problems almost immediately. The same problems you're experiencing now. So they closed it, marked it as unstable, restricted access. But every few years, someone doesn't get the message, or ignores the warnings, and ends up here. Like me, I said quietly. Like you. How do I get out? I asked again. There has to be a way. Keep driving, the voice said. That's all you can do. Keep driving and hope the canyon decides to let you go. Some make it out. Most don't. What happens to the ones who don't? The static came back, swallowing the voice. I tried to get them back, tried calling out, but there was no response. Just that rhythmic pulse, steady as a heartbeat. I hung up the handset and stared at the road ahead. Keep driving. That was the only advice, the only option. Keep driving and hope. But hope was getting harder to hold on to. The canyon changed again. The walls pulled back slightly, giving me a little more room, and the road widened to almost 2 full lanes. I allowed myself a tiny bit of relief. Maybe this was a sign I was getting close to the end. Maybe the worst was behind me. Then I saw the cars. They were off to the side, pulled onto what looked like a wider shoulder area. 5 of them, maybe 6, parked at odd angles. Old models, some from the 60s or 70s by the look of them. They were rusted, windows broken, tires flat, abandoned. I slowed down, trying to get a better look. One of the cars had its hood up, the engine long since stripped or rotted away. Another had all its doors open, like the occupants had gotten out in a hurry and never come back. And then I saw the truck. It was a big rig, older than mine, from the 80s maybe. It was pulled off at an angle, the trailer jackknifed against the canyon wall. The cab's door hung open, and I could see papers scattered across the ground fluttering in the wind. Log books, maybe. Delivery manifests. I wanted to stop, wanted to investigate, see if there were any clues that might help me. But I remembered that rest stop, remembered that figure standing in the yellow light, and I kept my foot on the accelerator. As I passed the wrecked truck, something moved in my peripheral vision. Just a flash, too quick to identify. I snapped my head around, staring at the cab, but I saw nothing. Just shadows and broken glass and rust. But I knew something had been there, knew it had been watching me pass. The abandoned vehicles disappeared behind me, and the canyon walls closed in again. I checked my fuel gauge, still 3/4 full. Checked my watch, 10:52 p.m. Checked the dashboard clock, 3:17 a.m. 4 hours and 25 minutes of difference now. Time was coming apart, unraveling like a cheap sweater. I tried to think about something else, anything else. Thought about home, about my apartment in Sacramento that I hardly ever saw. Thought about my sister in Portland, about how long it had been since I'd called her. Thought about my old truck, the one I'd sold to buy this new rig, and how maybe that had been a mistake. Anything to distract from the growing certainty that I was never going to leave this canyon. The road descended sharply again, and I had to really work the brakes to control my speed. The grade was steep enough that I could feel gravity trying to pull me forward, trying to accelerate the truck beyond what was safe. Sweat dripped down my face despite the cold, and then, without warning, the road ended. Not ended as in reaching its terminus, connecting to another highway. Ended as in just stopped. The pavement ran for another 50 feet and then simply ceased, giving way to dirt and rocks and nothing. I slammed on the brakes, the air system screaming. The truck shuddered, tires fighting for grip. I was going to go over. I could see it happening. Could see the nose of the truck tipping forward into that abyss beyond the road's edge. But the truck stopped. Maybe 10 feet from the end of the pavement. Close enough that my headlights illuminated nothing but empty air and the far canyon wall, miles away across that impossible gap. I sat there, engine idling, hands frozen on the wheel. My heart felt like it was trying to punch through my ribs. This couldn't be the end. Couldn't be. The GPS still showed a route ahead, still showed County Road 34 continuing for another dozen miles before connecting to the next state road. But the evidence of my eyes was clear. There was no road ahead. Just nothing. I put the truck in reverse and backed up carefully, giving myself room. Then I just sat there, trying to figure out what to do. Turn around? I couldn't. Not with a 53-foot trailer on a road this narrow. I'd end up over the edge for sure. Go back the way I'd come. Back past the abandoned vehicles, back past the rest stop with its silent watcher, back through all those twisting miles. And even if I did, would I find the entrance to the canyon? Or would I just keep looping, driving in circles forever? Wait for daylight? But what if daylight never came? What if the sun didn't rise in Grayson Canyon? I looked at my watch, 11:04 p.m. Looked at the dashboard clock, 4:32 a.m. If the dashboard was right, dawn should be coming in a couple of hours. If I waited, I'd at least be able to see what I was dealing with. I put the truck in park, left the engine running for heat, and settled in to wait. I was exhausted, but there was no way I could sleep. Not here. Not with that darkness pressing against the windows, with that silence that felt like it was waiting for something. I turned on my phone, hoping maybe I'd have signal now. Maybe I could call for help. No bars, no GPS. The screen showed I had plenty of battery, but everything else was dead. It couldn't find satellites, couldn't find towers, couldn't find anything. The CB radio crackled. "Still there, Cole?" I grabbed the handset. Where else would I go? Nowhere, the voice said. That's the point. You're nowhere now, between places, between times. What do you want from me? I asked, too tired to be afraid anymore. Nothing, the voice said. I don't want anything. I'm just like you. Stuck here. Been stuck here for a long time. How long? A pause, then, I don't know anymore. Months? Years? Time doesn't work right here. You know that already. Who are you? Does it matter? I'm just another driver who didn't listen to the warnings, who thought they could save some time by taking a shortcut. Just like you. How do I get out? I asked for what felt like the 100th time. I told you. Keep driving. Or wait. Sometimes the road comes back, sometimes it doesn't. What do you mean, comes back? You'll see, the voice said. Or you won't. Either way, good luck, Cole. You're going to need it. The static returned, and this time I knew the voice wasn't coming back. I sat there in the cab listening to the engine, watching the darkness beyond the headlights. And I waited for dawn, hoping it would come, knowing it might not. But either way, I was going to find out what Grayson Canyon really wanted from me. I must have dozed off despite telling myself I wouldn't. When I jerked awake, my neck screaming from the awkward angle, the first thing I noticed was that it was still dark. Not the pre-dawn darkness that comes before sunrise, with its gradual lightening of the sky. This was the same impenetrable black I'd been staring at for hours. My watch read 11:47 p.m. The dashboard clock read 9:22 a.m. Morning had come according to the truck's systems, but the sun hadn't risen, or couldn't rise, or didn't exist anymore in this place. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the grogginess. My mouth tasted like copper, and my hands were numb from the cold. The heater was still running, but the cab felt like a freezer. When I breathed out, my breath came out in thick clouds that didn't dissipate, just hung there in the air like fog. I checked the mirrors, half expecting to see that figure from the rest stop standing behind my truck. But there was nothing, just darkness pressed against the glass. Then I looked forward and my stomach dropped. The road was back. Where there had been nothing but empty air and a sheer drop, there was now pavement. It stretched ahead into the darkness, looking exactly like the road I'd been driving on before. Same width, same faded yellow line, same cracked asphalt. I stared at it, trying to understand. It hadn't been there before. I was certain of that. I'd sat here for hours watching that empty space, that void where the road should have been. But now it was back, as if it had never been gone. I put my hand on the gear shift, then hesitated. Every instinct I had was screaming at me not to drive on that road. It wasn't real, couldn't be real. Roads didn't just appear and disappear. But what choice did I have? I couldn't stay here forever. Couldn't go back. The only direction left was forward. I put the truck in gear and released the brake. The truck rolled forward slowly, tires crunching on loose gravel. My headlights illuminated the pavement ahead, and it looked solid enough, real enough. But so had everything else in this canyon until it wasn't. The wheels touched the new section of road, and I held my breath, waiting for it to collapse beneath me, waiting to feel that sickening lurch as the truck dropped into nothing. But the road held, felt just as solid as any other pavement. I kept driving, slow and cautious. The canyon walls were different now, closer together, leaning inward at an angle that seemed to defy gravity. The rock face was darker too, not the reddish-brown sandstone from before, but something else. Something that absorbed my headlights instead of reflecting them. The silence was absolute. I couldn't hear the engine anymore, couldn't hear the tires on the road, couldn't hear anything. It was like I'd gone deaf, except I could hear my own breathing, my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. I tried the CB radio, but it was completely dead, not static, not even the hiss of an empty channel. Just nothing. Like the device had never worked at all. The road curved to the left, and I followed it, the trailer swinging wide behind me. As I came out of the curve, I saw something that made me slam on the brakes. There was a truck ahead of me, the same truck I'd seen hours ago, the one that had vanished around a curve and never appeared again. It was sitting in the middle of the road, engine off, no lights. I sat there staring at it, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to back up, turn around somehow, go literally anywhere else. But I needed to know, needed to see if there was someone in that truck, someone who might be able to help me, or at least tell me what was happening. I pulled up behind it, close enough that my headlights illuminated the whole back end of the trailer. Arizona plates, just like before. The trailer covering was torn in places, flapping in a wind I couldn't feel or hear. I grabbed my flashlight from the door pocket, took a deep breath and opened my door. The cold hit me like a wall, so intense it drove the air from my lungs. I could feel ice crystals forming on my eyelashes, in my beard. My boots hit the pavement, and that's when I realized I still couldn't hear anything. The door closing behind me made no sound. My footsteps on the road made no sound. It was like walking through a vacuum, like being on the moon. I approached the other truck slowly, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The cab door was closed, windows dark. I couldn't see anyone inside. I reached for the door handle, then stopped. Something was written on the door in what looked like dried mud, or maybe dried blood. Letters, shaky and uneven. Don't look back. I stood there, flashlight beam trembling in my hand, staring at those words. Don't look back. Back at what? The road I'd come from, the canyon behind me? Something else? Against every survival instinct I possessed, I turned and looked behind me. The road I'd just driven on was gone. Not replaced with a drop-off or a cliff face, just gone. There was a wall of solid rock where the road should have been, like it had never existed at all. My own truck was sitting right against that wall, maybe 2 feet of space between the bumper and the stone. That was impossible. I'd just driven here. Had just covered maybe 100 feet from where I'd been parked. But the evidence of my eyes told a different story. Told me I was trapped between this rock wall and the abandoned truck ahead, with nowhere to go but the cab of one of these vehicles. I turned back to the abandoned truck, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold the flashlight. I pulled on the door handle, and it opened with no resistance. The cab was empty. Not just empty of people, but empty of everything. No seats, no steering wheel, no dashboard, just a hollow shell of metal, the floor rusted through in places, showing nothing but darkness beneath. I backed away, and that's when I heard it. A voice, faint and distant, but unmistakable. It was coming from inside the trailer. "Help," it said, a man's voice, hoarse and weak. "Please help me." I walked around to the back of the trailer, the flashlight beam shaking wildly. The doors were closed but not locked, secured only by a simple latch. "Hello?" I called out, though I couldn't hear my own voice. "Is someone in there?" "Please," the voice said again, stronger now. "I've been here so long. Please, let me out." My hand reached for the latch, then stopped. Something was wrong. The voice was too clear, too perfect. In this absolute silence where I couldn't even hear my own footsteps, where sound seemed to have stopped existing, this voice was coming through like it was right next to me. "Who are you?" I asked. "How did you get in there?" "I'm just a driver," the voice said. "Just like you. I took this route, got lost in the canyon. I've been trapped in here for days. Please, you have to let me out." "How did you get in the trailer?" I asked, my hand still hovering over the latch. A pause, then, "I don't remember. Please, it doesn't matter. Just open the door." But it did matter. It mattered a lot. Because truck trailers don't lock from the inside. If someone was in there, they'd been put in there, or something had put them in there. "I can't," I said, backing away. "I'm sorry." The voice changed, became deeper, angry. "Open the door, Cole." I ran, didn't think, didn't look back, just ran for my own truck. I could hear the voice behind me, screaming my name, except I shouldn't have been able to hear it because sound didn't work here, didn't exist. "Cole, Cole, come back, open the door." I reached my truck, grabbed the door handle. It was frozen solid, ice coating the metal. I yanked harder, using both hands, and it finally opened. I threw myself inside and slammed the door, hitting the lock button over and over. The voice stopped. Silence crashed back in, so complete it made my ears ring. I sat there, breathing hard, watching the trailer in my mirrors. Nothing moved. No one came around from behind it. Just that still, silent truck sitting in the middle of a road that shouldn't exist. Then I noticed something that made my blood run even colder than it already was. My truck's engine was off. I hadn't turned it off, had left it running when I got out. But now it was dead. The dashboard dark. No rumble of the diesel engine. I turned the key. Nothing happened. Not even a click. The battery was dead, or the starter was dead, or something was preventing the truck from starting. I tried again and again, pumping the accelerator, checking the battery gauge. Everything was dead, the truck was dead, I was trapped. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I was stuck between a rock wall that shouldn't exist and a trailer with something inside it that knew my name, and my only means of escape was a truck that wouldn't start. I looked at my phone, desperate for any option. Still no signal, but I pulled up the GPS app anyway, hoping maybe it could at least show me where I was. The app loaded, and what I saw didn't make any sense. According to the GPS, I was in 3 places at once. The signal was fracturing, splitting, showing my location as both 30 miles north and 40 miles south of where I'd entered the canyon, and also right at the entrance. Like I existed in multiple points of space simultaneously. I closed the app and opened my photo gallery, needing to see something normal, something from before this nightmare. My most recent photos were from 2 days ago, parked at a rest stop near Reno. The truck in the photos looked clean, almost new. I looked at my actual truck now, and in the faint light from my phone screen I could see rust on the dashboard. Deep rust, the kind that takes years to form. I looked at my hands. They were my hands. Same calluses, same old scar across my left knuckle from a bar fight 5 years ago. But when I held them up to the phone light, I could see through them. Just barely, just the faintest transparency, but it was there. I was fading, becoming less real, like Grayson Canyon was erasing me bit by bit. A tapping sound made me look up. Someone was standing next to my truck, tapping on the driver's side window. It was a man, or had been a man once. He was wearing a trucker's uniform from decades ago, the style from the 60s maybe. His face was pale, eyes hollow. He smiled at me, showing too many teeth. "Having trouble?" he asked, his voice muffled through the glass. I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Just stared at him. "The canyon does that sometimes," he said conversationally. "Kills your truck, traps you here. Happened to me too, long time ago. I waited for someone to come help me, but nobody came. Nobody comes. Go away," I managed to whisper. "I can help you," he said. "I know how to start your truck, know how to get out of here, but you have to do something for me first." "What?" I asked, though I already knew I wouldn't do it, whatever it was. "Open that trailer," he said, pointing at the abandoned truck. "Open it and let him out. He's been in there so long. It's cruel to keep him locked up." "No," I said. The man's smile widened. "Then I guess you'll be staying. You'll be here when your food runs out, when your water runs out. You'll be here when you start hearing voices, seeing things. You'll be here when you realize that dying would be better than this. But you can't die because the canyon won't let you." I said no, I repeated, my voice stronger now. The man shrugged. "Suit yourself. We've got all the time in the world. Literally." He walked away, dissolving into the darkness like he'd never been there at all. I sat in the frozen cab, trying to think. There had to be a way out. Had to be. People didn't just disappear. Trucks didn't just stop existing. Roads didn't appear and vanish. Except they did, apparently. In Grayson Canyon, all the rules were different. I tried the ignition again, more out of desperation than any real hope. To my shock, the engine turned over. Coughed once, twice, then roared to life. The dashboard lights came on, the heater started blowing, and the radio crackled to life. "Don't trust them," a voice said through the static. Nothing here is real. Keep driving. Don't stop." I didn't need to be told twice. I slammed the truck into gear and hit the accelerator. The truck lurched forward toward that abandoned trailer. At the last second, I saw the trailer doors swing open. Saw something inside, something huge and dark that moved wrong, that had too many limbs. I cranked the wheel hard to the left, the trailer behind me fishtailing, tires screaming. I missed the open trailer by inches. Kept driving, not looking back, not slowing down. The rock wall that had been ahead of me was gone now, replaced by more road, twisting deeper into the canyon. I took the turns too fast, the trailer swinging wide, threatening to jackknife. But I didn't slow down. Couldn't slow down. Because I could see headlights in my mirror now, following me. The abandoned truck's lights were on, and it was coming after me. But that was impossible. The cab had been empty, gutted. There was no one to drive it, unless there didn't need to be. I pushed the accelerator to the floor, the engine roaring in protest. The speedometer climbed past 60, past 70, way too fast for these curves, but the lights behind me were getting closer. The CB radio crackled. "You can't run, Cole. The canyon is patient. It'll wait. It's got nothing but time." I grabbed the handset and threw it across the cab. It hit the passenger window and shattered. The lights behind me were getting brighter, closer. I could hear an engine now, even over my own. A deep, throaty rumble that didn't sound like any diesel I'd ever heard. The road ahead split into two paths, neither of them marked on my GPS. I took the right fork without thinking, and immediately knew I'd made a mistake. This road was even narrower, barely wide enough for my truck. The walls pressed in on both sides so close I could have reached out and touched them. And it was going down, steep, dropping into what felt like the very center of the earth. But I couldn't turn around, couldn't stop. The lights behind me took the same fork, still closing in. I descended into the darkness, the temperature dropping with every foot. Ice formed on my windshield, on my mirrors. My breath came out in clouds so thick I could barely see. And then, as suddenly as it had started, the pursuit ended. I checked my mirrors, and the lights were gone. No truck behind me, no sound of an engine. Just my own truck, racing down into nothing. I eased off the accelerator, trying to regain some control. The road was still descending, but less steeply now. And ahead, far ahead, I could see something that might have been light. Not the yellow glow of my headlights, but something else. Something blue-white and cold. I drove toward it because there was nowhere else to go, and as I got closer, I realized what I was seeing. It was the end of the canyon, or what should have been the end. There was a massive opening ahead, like a mouth in the rock. Beyond it, I could see stars. Real stars, not the empty blackness I'd been driving through. Hope surged through me. I was going to make it, going to get out of this nightmare. I drove toward that opening, accelerating again. Almost there, just a few hundred more feet. That's when I saw them. They were standing along the sides of the road, dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. All the people who'd gotten lost in Grayson Canyon over the years. Truckers in outdated uniforms. Construction workers with hard hats and tools. A few civilians in regular clothes. They were all standing there perfectly still, watching me drive past. Their faces were all the same. Pale, hollow-eyed, wearing that same too-wide smile. And as I passed, they all turned to follow my progress, heads swiveling in unison. I kept my eyes forward, focusing on that opening ahead. Don't look at them. Don't acknowledge them. Just drive. I was maybe 50 feet from the opening when I saw the final figure. It was standing right in the middle of the road, directly between me and freedom. It was wearing a trucker's uniform just like mine. and as my headlights hit it, I saw its face. It was me, an exact copy, down to the scar on my knuckle, the stubble on my jaw. But its eyes were wrong, empty and dark, like looking into a void. The thing wearing my face raised its hand, palm out. A command to stop. I didn't stop, hit the accelerator harder, aiming straight for it. If I was going to get out of this canyon, I'd drive through anything and everything that tried to stop me. The thing that looked like me didn't move, just stood there, hand still raised, as my truck bore down on it. At the last possible second, it stepped aside. I shot past it, through the opening, and back onto a normal highway. The transition was so sudden it took my brain a moment to process what had happened. 1 second, I was in that narrow canyon passage, surrounded by impossible darkness and those watching figures. The next, I was on a 4-lane interstate, headlights reflecting off a standard green highway sign that read, I-40 East, Flagstaff, 47 miles. I eased off the accelerator, my hands shaking so badly I could barely control the wheel. Normal traffic flowed around me. A sedan passed on my left, the driver talking on a phone, not even glancing my way. A family in an SUV went by on the right, kids in the back seat playing on tablets. Everything was normal. Everything was real. I was out. I checked my mirrors, expecting to see that canyon opening behind me, expecting to see those figures or that thing wearing my face. But there was nothing unusual, just highway and desert, and the faint glow of civilization on the horizon. My dashboard clock read 6:47 a.m. My watch read 12:03 a.m. The time gap had stabilized at 6 hours and 44 minutes. Like something had broken in both timepieces and they'd just accepted their new relationship to reality. The fuel gauge still read 3/4 full. I pulled into the first truck stop I saw, parking in a spot far from any other vehicles. My legs nearly gave out when I climbed down from the cab. I had to hold on to the door to keep from falling. The air smelled wrong. Too clean, too fresh. Like I'd forgotten what normal air was supposed to smell like. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the light hurt my eyes. Made them water. I walked into the truck stop on unsteady legs, and the warmth inside felt like stepping into another world. Other truckers were sitting at tables, eating breakfast, drinking coffee, laughing at something on a TV mounted in the corner. Normal sounds, normal people. I must have looked rough because the waitress who approached me had concern written all over her face. "You okay, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I managed to say, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. Hoarse, like I'd been screaming. "Just coffee, please, black." She brought it, and I wrapped both hands around the cup, letting the heat seep into my frozen fingers. I pulled out my phone, needing to ground myself in something concrete, something real. I had 17 missed calls, all from the dispatcher. The delivery I was supposed to make had been due yesterday afternoon. I was nearly 18 hours late. I called back, and Jessica answered on the first ring. "Cole, Jesus Christ, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for hours." "My phone had no signal," I said. "I was in a canyon, and the signal just dropped completely." "What canyon?" she asked. "The route I sent you didn't go through any canyons. It was mostly open desert and then straight highway." I pulled up my GPS history, the map showing everywhere I'd been in the last 24 hours. According to my phone, I'd driven straight from Reno to this truck stop. No detours. No County Road 34. No Grayson Canyon. Just a straight normal route that I'd supposedly completed in the normal amount of time, except somehow I was 18 hours late. "I don't understand," I said. "You sent me down County Road 34, through Grayson Canyon. I have it right here in my GPS." "Cole, I sent you the standard route." I-80 to I-15 to I-40. I've got the message right here in the system. There's no County Road 34 on this route. I ended the call and checked my GPS history again, zooming in on the area where the canyon should have been. There was nothing, just empty desert. Not even a road designation. Like County Road 34 had never existed. But I knew it had. I had the memories, still fresh and terrifying. Had the time discrepancy on my watch and dashboard. Had the crack in my windshield from that falling rock. Had the rust on my dashboard that hadn't been there before. I pulled out my wallet and found a business card I'd gotten from another trucker a few years back. Guy named Dalton, who specialized in weird roads, who collected stories about stretches of highway that didn't quite make sense. I'd thought he was a little crazy at the time, but now I needed to talk to someone who might understand. I called the number on the card. It rang 6 times, and I was about to hang up when someone answered. "Yeah?" A rough voice, suspicious. "Dalton, this is Cole Briggs. We met at a truck stop in Nevada a few years back. You gave me your card, said to call if I ever ran into anything strange on the road." A pause. "I remember you. What happened?" I told him everything. The canyon, the rest stop, the vanishing truck, the voice on the radio, all of it. I expected him to laugh, to tell me I'd been hallucinating, to hang up on me. Instead, he was quiet for a long moment, then, "Grayson Canyon. You've heard of it?" "Heard of it? Yeah. I've been researching it for 15 years, trying to find it." "Well, don't," I said. "Trust me." "How did you get out?" he asked. "Most people who go in don't come back." "I don't know," I admitted. I just kept driving, and eventually I was back on a normal highway. "You're one of the lucky ones, then," Dalton said. "Most people who make it out say the same thing. They can't explain how they got out, can't find the canyon again if they try. It's like the place decides who gets to leave and who doesn't." "Why?" I asked. "What is that place?" "Nobody knows for sure," he said. "I've got theories. Ancient sites, dimensional thin spots, collective trauma made manifest. But they're just theories. The only thing I know for certain is that Grayson Canyon is real, even though it doesn't show up on any map, and it's been trapping people for almost 80 years. The voice on the radio," I said. "It told me about the construction crew that disappeared." "That's real," Dalton confirmed. "I've got the records. 30 men vanished in 1943. The state finished the road anyway, but they closed it less than a year later. Too many incidents. Too many disappearances." "So why can GPS still route people through there?" "It doesn't," Dalton said. "Not really. The routes that lead to Grayson Canyon are errors, I guess you could call them. Glitches in the system. They appear and disappear. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. And when they are there, they always seem to target people who are in a hurry. People who'll take a shortcut without questioning it too much." Like me, I thought. Exactly like me. "What do I do now?" I asked. "Live your life," Dalton said. "Tell people if you want, though most won't believe you. Keep driving if that's what you do, but pay attention to your routes from now on. Double-check everything. Because Grayson Canyon might let you go once, but if you end up there again..." He trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid. I thanked him and ended the call. Sat there in that truck stop booth, drinking coffee that had gone cold, watching normal people live their normal lives. That was 3 years ago. I'm still driving, still hauling freight through the western states, but I check every route now, multiple times. I verify with dispatch, with GPS, with paper maps when I can find them. I avoid canyons when I can, stick to the main highways, the ones with lights and traffic and other people. My watch still runs 6 hours and 44 minutes behind my dashboard clock. I've tried to fix it, taken it to 3 different jewelers. but they all say there's nothing wrong with it. The mechanism is perfect, keeping perfect time. It's just keeping perfect time in a different reality than the rest of us. Sometimes, late at night when I'm on a long haul, my CB radio will crackle to life even though it's turned off. I'll hear that voice, the one that knows my name, the one that told me to keep driving. It never says much, just, "Still out there, Cole? Still running?" I don't answer. Don't even acknowledge that I heard it. Just keep driving, watching the road, staying alert. Because I know the truth now. Know it in my bones, in the rust on my dashboard, in the crack in my windshield that no amount of repair can fully fix. Grayson Canyon is patient. It's got nothing but time. And I'm still out here on the roads it hunts, still driving through the darkness. Still trying to stay one step ahead of a place that doesn't technically exist. Most nights I'm okay. I make my deliveries. I sleep in normal truck stops. I live a normal life. But some nights when the moon is dark and the roads are empty, I'll see a sign that shouldn't be there. Green with white lettering, half hidden by a scrub bush. Grayson Canyon, next 47 miles extreme caution. And I'll grip the wheel tighter, and I'll take the next exit. Any exit, just to get away from that sign. Because I know that if I follow that road again, if I let myself be drawn back into that canyon, I might not get out a second time. I tell this story to other truckers sometimes, usually late at night when we're all trying to stay awake with bad coffee and worse food. Most of them laugh it off, call it a good ghost story. A few get quiet, get that look in their eyes that says they've seen things too, things they can't explain. And once in a while, someone will pull me aside later and tell me about a road they took once. A route that seemed fine until it wasn't. A place where time stopped making sense and the miles stretched on forever. We share these stories like warnings, like prayers, like the only defense we have against roads that hunt. Because out here in the vast emptiness of the American West, where the highways cut through ancient stone and cross lands that were strange long before humans built roads on them, there are places where the normal rules don't apply. Places where you can get lost not just in space, but in time, in reality itself. Grayson Canyon is one of those places, but it's not the only one. And every time I fire up my truck and pull out onto the highway, I wonder if tonight's going to be the night I find another one. Or if tonight's going to be the night that Grayson Canyon finds me again. So I drive. That's all I can do. Drive and hope and pay attention to every sign, every route, every road that looks just a little too empty, a little too dark. And I try not to think about that last thing I saw as I drove out of the canyon. That figure standing in the middle of the road, wearing my face, watching me escape. Because sometimes, late at night when I'm staring at my reflection in a dark window, I wonder if I really did escape at all. Or if I'm still in that canyon right now, still driving, still trying to find a way out, while something wearing my face lives my life out here in the real world. I don't have an answer to that question. And I'm not sure I want one. All I know is that tomorrow I'll climb back into my truck. I'll check my route 3 times, avoid any roads that make my gut clench, and I'll drive. Because that's what I do. That's what I've always done. But I'll also keep watching for that sign. That green sign with white lettering that appears where it shouldn't. Grayson Canyon. Because I know it's still out there, somewhere between the mapped roads and the empty places, waiting for the next driver who thinks they can save some time by taking a shortcut. Waiting with the patience of stone and darkness and time that doesn't move the way it should. And if you're reading this, if you drive these western highways, if you haul freight through the canyon country, I have one piece of advice. Check your routes. Every single time. Don't trust GPS alone. Don't trust dispatcher directions without verifying them. And if you see a sign for Grayson Canyon, for County Road 34, For any route that doesn't quite look right, turn around, and don't look back. Because some shortcuts cost more than time. Some shortcuts cost everything. My name is Mason Holt, and I've been hauling freight for 12 years. I started when I was 23, fresh out of a failed attempt at college, and looking for something that would let me see the country while making decent money. Turned out, trucking was exactly what I needed. No boss breathing down my neck, no office politics, just me and the road and whatever cargo I was hauling from point A to point B. I've driven just about every major route in the lower 48. I-80 across the heartland, I-10 through the southern deserts, I-95 up and down the eastern seaboard. I've handled ice storms in Montana, dust storms in New Mexico, and traffic nightmares in every major city you can name. I thought I'd seen it all, experienced every kind of road condition this country had to throw at a driver. I was wrong. This happened in mid-March about 8 months ago. I was running a load of electronics from Sacramento to Denver, a route I'd driven maybe 24 times before. Nothing special about the cargo, nothing unusual about the timing. Just a standard haul that should have taken me about 16 hours, including stops for fuel and food. The weather forecast looked clear. A little wind in Nevada, maybe some light rain once I hit the Rockies, but nothing that would slow me down significantly. I left Sacramento just after noon on a Thursday, planning to arrive in Denver Friday morning in time for the 8 a.m. delivery window. Everything went fine for the first 6 hours. I made good time across California, pushed through Reno without any issues, and headed east on I-80 into Nevada. The sun was setting behind me, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple. It was actually a pretty evening, the kind that reminds you why you got into this job in the first place. I stopped at a truck stop in Winnemucca around 7 p.m., topped off my fuel, grabbed a sandwich and a large coffee. There were maybe a dozen other trucks parked there. Drivers either sleeping or getting ready for night runs like me. I exchanged nods with a couple of them, the universal trucker greeting that says, "I see you, fellow road warrior," without requiring actual conversation. While I was eating, I checked my phone for messages. My dispatcher had sent me an update about an hour earlier. There was construction on I-80 near the Utah border, lane closures that were backing up traffic for miles. Expected delays of 3 to 4 hours. I called him back. "Hey, it's Mason. Just saw your message about the backup." "Yeah, it's a mess," he said. I could hear him typing in the background, probably roading other drivers around different problems. Semi jackknifed around 4 p.m., took out both eastbound lanes. They've got one lane open now, but it's crawling. "What are my options?" I asked, already knowing I couldn't afford a 4-hour delay. The delivery window in Denver was tight, and missing it meant the warehouse wouldn't accept the cargo until Monday, which meant I'd be sitting on a load for 3 days, which meant no payment until it was delivered. "Let me check," he said, more typing. "Okay, I've got an alternate route for you. It'll add maybe 30 miles to your total distance, but should save you 2 hours at least. Maybe more if that backup gets worse." "Send it to me," I said. "You sure? It's pretty remote. Goes through some canyon country." I should have paid attention to that. Should have asked more questions. But I was thinking about my schedule, about making that delivery window, about keeping my streak of on-time deliveries intact. "I've driven remote before," I said. "It's not a problem." "All right," he said, and I could hear the reluctance in his voice. "Sending it now. Route takes you south on Highway 305, then picks up Route 839 through the canyons. You'll reconnect with I-80 on the other side of the construction zone." My phone pinged with the route notification. I pulled it up on my GPS, zooming in to get a sense of what I was looking at. 2-lane highway, winding through what looked like pretty rugged terrain. But it was a state route, which meant it would be maintained, would have decent pavement. "Looks good," I said. "Thanks for finding this. Drive safe, Mason, and call me if you run into any problems." "Will do," I said, and ended the call. I finished my sandwich, used the restroom, and headed back to my truck. The parking lot was darker now, the sun fully set. A few drivers were standing around outside their cabs, smoking and talking in low voices. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, and pulled back onto the highway. Highway 305 split off from I-80 about 20 miles east of Winnemucca. The turnoff was well marked, a standard green highway sign with reflective lettering. I took the exit, watching my GPS to make sure I was on the right track. The road was smooth at first, newer pavement that felt good under my tires. There wasn't much traffic, just the occasional car or pickup truck passing in the opposite direction. The desert stretched out on both sides, flat and featureless under the stars. After about 40 minutes, I hit the junction with Route 839. This was where the alternate route really began, where I'd be cutting through the canyon country my dispatcher had mentioned. The road changed immediately. It narrowed from 2 full lanes to maybe 1.5, the pavement older and more weathered. The shoulders disappeared completely, replaced by a solid white line on the right and a sheer rock wall rising up maybe 30 feet. On the left side, there was nothing. No shoulder, no guardrail, just a drop-off into darkness. I slowed down, adjusting to the new conditions. This wasn't ideal, but it wasn't the worst road I'd ever driven either. As long as I stayed alert and didn't push my speed, I'd be fine. The GPS showed Route 839 as a thin line cutting through the topography, following the curves of the canyon. According to the map, I had about 70 miles of this before reconnecting with I-80. At my current speed of around 40 miles per hour, that meant less than 2 hours. Still better than sitting in a backup. I settled in, one hand on the wheel, watching the road carefully. My headlights carved a tunnel through the darkness ahead, reflecting off the rock wall to my right. The CB radio was on, tuned to channel 19, but there was no chatter, just a faint hiss of static, which made sense given how remote this area was. The canyon walls grew higher as I drove, closing in from both sides. The road twisted and turned, following the contours of the rock. Some of the curves were sharp enough that I had to slow to 25 miles per hour to navigate them safely, the trailer behind me swinging wide, the tires getting close to that white line, and the void beyond it. After about 20 minutes on Route 839, I noticed something odd. My phone, which had been sitting in the cup holder with 2 bars of signal, suddenly showed no service at all. The GPS was still working, still tracking my position, but the cellular signal was completely gone. I wasn't too worried about that. Cell coverage is spotty in remote areas, especially in canyons where the rock walls block the signal. I'd been in dead zones before, and I'd be in them again. It was just part of driving through the empty parts of the country. What bothered me more was when the GPS stopped updating. I was watching the little blue dot that represented my truck, watching it move along the red line of my route. And then, without any warning or error message, it froze. The dot stopped moving, even though I was still driving, still covering ground. I tapped the screen, thinking maybe it had gone into sleep mode. Nothing happened. I swiped to close the app and restart it, but when I opened it again, the screen was blank except for a message. Searching for GPS signal. I checked my phone's settings. Location services were turned on, the GPS receiver was active, but it wasn't finding any satellites, which was strange, because GPS signals come from orbit, from satellites that should be visible even in a canyon as long as you have some open sky above you. I glanced up through the windshield. The canyon walls leaned in at an angle, but I could still see a strip of sky overhead, could still see stars. There was no reason the GPS shouldn't work, but it didn't. The phone kept searching, kept failing to connect. I set it aside and focused on driving. The GPS had already shown me the road, and it looked straightforward enough. Stay on Route 839 for 70 miles following the canyon until it reconnected with I-80. I had my odometer to track distance, and as long as I didn't see any turnoffs or intersections, I couldn't get lost. The CB radio crackled, and for a moment I thought I heard a voice underneath the static. I turned up the volume, listening carefully. Route 839. The words cut through clearly, then dissolved back into noise. I grabbed the handset. Breaker 19, this is Mason on Route 839 southbound. Did someone call me? Over. Static, just pure white noise with occasional electronic squeals. If anyone can hear me, please respond. I'm running Route 839 through the canyon. Over. More static. Whatever I'd heard, if I'd heard anything at all, was gone now. I hung up the handset and kept driving. The road descended now, dropping deeper into the canyon. My ears popped from the elevation change. The temperature inside the cab dropped too, cold air seeping in even though the heater was running. I passed a sign, one of those old-style highway markers that had probably been there for decades. It was so faded I could barely read it in my headlights. Route 839 next services, 94 miles, 94 miles. That was more than the 70 miles my GPS had shown before it stopped working. But maybe the GPS had been measuring as the crow flies, and the actual road distance was longer because of all the curves and switchbacks. That would make sense. Still, 94 miles was a long way to go without any services. No gas stations, no rest stops, nothing. I checked my fuel gauge, 3/4 full. Plenty to cover 94 miles even with the engine working harder to navigate all these grades and curves. I kept driving, the minutes ticking by. The canyon walls seemed to be getting closer, the road narrower. Or maybe that was just a trick of the darkness and the headlights, making everything seem more compressed than it really was. After what felt like about 30 minutes, I checked my trip odometer. I'd reset it when I turned onto Route 839, so it should show how far I'd traveled on this road. It read 18.7 miles. But that didn't feel right. I'd been driving for at least 30 minutes, probably closer to 40. Even at reduced speed, I should have covered at least 25 miles, maybe 30. I tapped the odometer display, wondering if it was malfunctioning. The numbers flickered but didn't change. 18.7 miles. I tried to remember the last mile marker I'd passed, but I couldn't. The road had been so winding, the darkness so complete that I'd lost track. I resolved to pay more attention, to watch for the next marker. The road straightened out briefly, giving me maybe a 1/4 mile of visibility ahead. My headlights picked up something on the pavement, something dark and irregular. As I got closer, I realized it was tire marks, long, black streaks that started in the middle of the lane and curved sharply to the left, ending right at the edge of the drop-off. Skid marks. Someone had braked hard here, had almost gone over the edge. I slowed down even more, scanning the area for any sign of what might have caused it. An animal in the road, maybe, or a rock slide. But I saw nothing unusual, just the same narrow strip of pavement and the same sheer walls. I kept going, and a few minutes later I saw more skid marks. Then more. Every few hundred yards, another set of marks, all ending at that drop-off on the left side. Some of them looked fresh, the rubber still dark and pronounced. Others were faded, worn down by time and weather. How many drivers had come close to disaster on this road? How many had actually gone over? I tried the CB radio again. Breaker 19, this is Mason on Route 839. If anyone has driven this route before... I'd appreciate any information about road conditions ahead. Over. The static changed pitch, became almost rhythmic, and underneath it I heard what might have been laughter, or maybe just noise that sounded like laughter. I hung up the handset, my hands gripping the wheel tighter. A new sign appeared, mile marker 12. I checked my odometer, 24.3 miles. According to my truck, I'd traveled more than twice as far as the mile marker indicated. The numbers weren't matching up, weren't making sense. I thought about turning around, heading back to I-80 and just sitting out the construction delay. But the road was too narrow to turn around. I'd have to back up for miles to find a wide enough spot, and backing up a 53-foot trailer on a winding canyon road with no shoulder was basically impossible. The only way was forward. I was committed now. The canyon changed again. The walls pulled back slightly and the road widened just enough that I felt like I could breathe a little easier. There was even a small pull-out area on the right, carved into the rock face. Just big enough for one vehicle to park without blocking the road. I almost kept driving, but something made me pull over. Maybe it was the sense that I needed to stop and think, to figure out what was happening with my GPS and odometer and mile markers. Maybe it was just fatigue catching up with me, the stress of navigating this difficult road in the dark. I pulled into the turnout and put the truck in park, leaving the engine running. The headlights illuminated the rock wall ahead, showing layers of sediment, different colors of stone stacked on top of each other like pages in a book. I sat there for a moment, trying to calm my racing heart. Everything was fine. I was just on a remote road with some minor equipment malfunctions. GPS fails sometimes, odometers can be off, mile markers might be placed incorrectly. None of it meant anything was actually wrong, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong indeed. I pulled out my logbook, the paper one I was required to keep as backup. I flipped to today's entry and noted the time, 9:47 p.m. According to my dashboard clock. I wrote down my location as Route 839, mile marker 12, and noted that I'd pulled over to rest. Then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The date on my logbook was wrong. Or rather, my previous entry was wrong. According to what I'd written, I'd started this trip on Thursday, March 14th, but the pre-printed date at the top of today's page was Saturday, March 16th. I'd lost a day. Somewhere between leaving Sacramento and pulling over in this canyon, an entire day had disappeared. But that was impossible. I'd left Sacramento yesterday afternoon, had driven through the evening, stopped in Winnemucca, gotten the alternate route from my dispatcher. All of that had happened in the span of maybe 8 hours. There was no way a full day had passed. I checked my phone, even though it had no signal. The date displayed on the lock screen, Saturday, March 16th, 9:47 p.m. My hands started shaking. I closed the logbook, set it aside, and just sat there trying to process what this meant. Either I'd somehow lost consciousness for a full day and had been driving on autopilot, which seemed impossible, or time itself had jumped forward, which was equally impossible. Or I was still Thursday and my phone and logbook were both malfunctioning, showing the wrong date. That had to be it. Some kind of electromagnetic interference in the canyon, maybe. Something that was screwing with electronic devices and somehow even affecting the mechanical date stamp on my logbook pages. I took a deep breath, then another. I needed to stay calm, stay rational. Panic wouldn't help me. I just needed to keep driving, get through this canyon, reconnect with I-80. Once I was back in normal territory, everything would make sense again. I was about to put the truck back in gear when I saw movement in my passenger mirror. Something was walking on the road behind me, coming from the direction I'd just driven. I grabbed my flashlight from the door pocket and shined it back toward the road. The beam caught a figure maybe 50 yards back, moving slowly toward my truck. It was a person. A man, I thought, though it was hard to tell at this distance. He was walking right down the center of the road, not hurrying, just a steady pace. I watched him approach, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to just drive away, leave him there in the dark. But you don't leave people stranded on remote roads. That's not how truckers operate. We look out for each other, help when we can. I opened my door and climbed down, the flashlight still in my hand. The cold air hit me immediately, colder than it should have been for March. My breath came out in clouds. "Hey!" I called out. "You okay? You need help?" The figure stopped. It was close enough now that I could see more details. A man, middle-aged, wearing clothes that looked wrong somehow. Not wrong as in damaged or dirty, but wrong as in outdated, like styles from 20 or 30 years ago. He didn't answer my question, just stood there in the middle of the road, maybe 20 yards away now, staring at me. "Do you need a ride?" I asked, though every instinct I had was screaming at me not to let this person into my truck. The man tilted his head, like he was considering my question. Then he spoke, his voice carrying clearly in the still air. "You shouldn't be here." "I'm just passing through," I said. "Got detoured because of construction on I-80. "There is no construction," the man said. "There's never construction. That's just what they tell people to get them onto this road." "What are you talking about? Who's they?" "The road," he said. "Route 839. It needs drivers. Needs vehicles. So it creates detours, construction delays, accidents. Anything to redirect traffic onto itself." I took a step back toward my truck. This guy was clearly unstable, maybe high on something. "Look, I can't help you if you don't want help. I'm going to get back in my truck now." "It won't matter," the man said. "You can't leave. None of us can leave. The road doesn't let go once it has you." "I'm leaving right now," I said, backing up another step. The man laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Drive all you want. Forward, backward, doesn't matter. You'll just end up right back here. This spot, this exact turnout, I've been trying for years." "Years," he said, "years." I turned and ran for my truck, throwing myself into the cab and slamming the door. I hit the lock button, my hands shaking so badly I could barely control them. The man was still standing there in the road, illuminated by my headlights now. He was smiling, but it was a sad smile, the smile of someone who'd given up hope a long time ago. I put the truck in gear and hit the accelerator, pulling back onto the road. I had to swerve around him, came within a few feet of clipping him with my mirror, but he didn't move, didn't even flinch. Just watched me go with that sad, knowing smile. I checked my mirror once I was past him, expecting to see him still standing there. But the road behind me was empty. He was gone, like he'd never been there at all. I drove faster now, pushing my speed up to 50 despite the curves. I needed to get out of this canyon, needed to get back to normal roads where things made sense. But the man's words kept echoing in my head. "You'll just end up right back here." I drove for what felt like an hour, following curve after curve, descent after descent. My odometer climbed. 30 miles, 40 miles, 50 miles. But the mile markers, when I could see them, told a different story. Mile 12, mile 14, mile 11, mile 15. They weren't sequential, weren't following any pattern I could discern. And then I saw it. A turnout on the right side of the road, carved into the rock face. Just big enough for one vehicle, the same turnout I'd stopped at before. I slammed on the brakes, my heart hammering. This couldn't be the same place. I'd been driving for an hour, had covered dozens of miles. There was no way I was back where I'd started. But I recognized the rock formation ahead, the way the layers of sediment curved and folded. Recognized the exact angle of the pullout, the same scuff marks on the pavement where countless tires had pulled in and out. It was the same place, exactly the same. And standing in the middle of the road, right where I'd left him, was the man in the outdated clothes. He wasn't smiling anymore. Now he just looked tired. "I told you," he said, his voice carrying through my closed window. "The road doesn't let go." I sat frozen in the driver's seat, staring at the man through my windshield. My mind was trying to find an explanation, any explanation that would make sense of what I was seeing. Maybe there were multiple turnouts that looked similar. Maybe I'd gotten turned around somehow, had accidentally reversed direction without realizing it. But I knew those explanations were wrong. I'd been driving forward the entire time, had watched the road carefully, had taken every curve exactly as it appeared. There had been no intersections, no places where I could have looped back on myself. And yet, here I was, at the same spot I'd left an hour ago. The man walked toward my truck slowly, his hands visible, palms out. Not threatening, just resigned. When he got close enough, he tapped on my window. Against my better judgment, I cracked it open about an inch. "My name is Victor Hayes," he said. "I've been on this road since '98. That's 25 years if the date you're thinking of is correct." "That's impossible," I said, though my voice sounded weak even to me. "You'll learn that impossible doesn't mean much on Route 839, Victor said. "The rules are different here. Time, distance, direction. None of them work the way they should." "How did you end up here?" I asked. "Same way you did, probably. Construction delay, detour, alternate route that looked fine on paper. I was hauling steel beams from Portland to Salt Lake City. Never made the delivery." He paused, looking down at his hands. "My wife thinks I abandoned her. My kids grew up without me. And I've been driving this same stretch of road over and over, trying to find a way out." "There has to be a way out," I said. "Roads don't just trap people. That's not how reality works." "Reality," Victor repeated, and laughed bitterly. "You still think you're in normal reality? Look at your phone, check the date, check the time. Then drive for another hour and check again. Tell me if reality is still working the way you think it should." I didn't want to believe him, but I'd already seen the evidence. The GPS failure, the mismatched odometer readings, the lost day. Something was fundamentally wrong with this place. "What happens if I just stop?" I asked. "What if I park here and wait for help?" "Help doesn't come," Victor said. "I waited for 3 months, sat in my truck, rationed my food, drank rainwater that pooled in the rock formations. No one drove past. No rescue vehicles, no helicopters, nothing. Finally, I gave up and started driving again, hoping I'd find something. Anything. But there's nothing to find. Just this road looping back on itself." "My dispatcher knows where I am," I said. "When I don't show up in Denver, he'll send someone looking for me." "Will he?" Victor asked. "Or will Route 839 tell him you completed your delivery just fine? Will it send messages from your phone saying everything's okay? This road is smart, it knows how to cover its tracks." I pulled out my phone, even though it had no signal. I opened my message app, looking at my last exchange with my dispatcher. The timestamps were wrong. Messages I'd sent hours ago showed times that hadn't happened yet. And there, at the bottom of the conversation, were messages I didn't remember sending. "Made it through the alternate route just fine. Thanks for the heads up about construction. Mason delivery completed ahead of schedule. Heading back west. Mason." I stared at those messages, reading them over and over. I hadn't sent them. couldn't have sent them without cell signal. But there they were, time-stamped for tomorrow morning, already marked as delivered and read. "It's already covering for you," Victor said quietly. "Making sure no one comes looking, that's what it does." I set the phone down, my hands shaking. "How many others are there? Besides you and me?" "I've seen 3 other trucks in the 25 years I've been here," Victor said. "Each one appeared, drove the loop for a while, then disappeared. I don't know if they got out or if something else happened to them. I just know I'm still here, still driving, still trying." "Why are you on foot?" I asked, realizing I hadn't seen another truck anywhere. Victor's expression darkened. "My truck ran out of fuel about 15 years ago. Gauge always showed half full no matter how much I drove, and then one day the engine just died. Wouldn't restart. I've been walking the loop ever since." "That doesn't make sense. You'd die of dehydration in a few days." "You'd think so," Victor said. "But time doesn't pass normally here. Sometimes I walk for what feels like hours, and my watch only shows minutes. Sometimes I sleep for what feels like minutes and wake up to find days have passed. I don't get hungry the way I should. Don't get thirsty. It's like my body is stuck in a loop too, just like the road." I looked at my fuel gauge. Still 3/4 full, exactly where it had been since entering the canyon. Victor was right. It hadn't moved at all. "What are you carrying?" Victor asked, nodding toward my trailer. "Electronics. Computer equipment, mostly." I wonder if that matters. If the cargo determines how long the road keeps you." "What do you mean?" "Just a theory," Victor said. "The 3 trucks I saw, one was carrying livestock, one had a refrigerated trailer with food, one was hauling cars, all different cargo. They all disappeared at different times. I had steel beams. Maybe the road wants certain things, lets go of others." "That's insane," I said. "Is it?" Victor asked. "Is it any more insane than a road that loops back on itself, that makes time jump forward and backward, that traps people for decades?" He had a point. "So, what do I do?" I asked. "Just drive until it decides to let me go." "That's what I've been doing," Victor said. "Haven't found a better option yet. But maybe you'll have better luck. You've got a truck that still runs. You've got fuel. You can cover more ground than I can." "Come with me," I said, surprising myself. "Ride in the passenger seat. We'll figure this out together." Victor smiled, that same sad smile from before. "I appreciate the offer, but I can't. I tried to get in someone else's truck once, years ago, grabbed the door handle, and..." He held up his hand, showing me a scar across his palm. "It burned me, like touching a hot stove. The road won't let me leave my own route. I have to walk it. What if I drove slowly, kept pace with you? You could try," he said. But his tone suggested it wouldn't work. "Listen, I'm going to keep walking. You do what you think is best. If you find a way out, if you make it back to the real world, do me a favor. Look up Catherine Hayes in Portland, Oregon. Tell her Victor didn't abandon her. Tell her I tried to come home." "I will," I said, though I had no idea if I'd ever get the chance. Victor nodded, stepped back from my truck and started walking. He moved slowly but steadily, heading in the direction I'd just come from. Or thought I'd come from. On this road, direction didn't seem to mean much. I sat there for another minute, trying to decide what to do. Then I put the truck in gear and started driving again. Maybe Victor was right and I'd just end up back here. But I had to try. Had to believe there was a way out. I drove carefully, watching the odometer, counting the mile markers when I could see them. The numbers still didn't match, still made no sense, but I tracked them anyway, looking for patterns. mile 12, mile 18, mile 9, mile 23, mile 12 again. I passed the same rock formations multiple times. The same curves, the same skid marks on the pavement. The road was repeating, but not in a simple loop. It was more complex than that, like a knot that folded back on itself in multiple places. After what my watch said was 2 hours, but my dashboard clock said was 30 minutes, I saw something new. There was a truck ahead of me, parked in the middle of the road. It was old, maybe from the early 2000s. The cab door was open, and the headlights were still on, though they were dim, the battery clearly dying. I slowed as I approached, pulling up behind it. I grabbed my flashlight and got out, the cold air hitting me like a wall. I approached the truck cautiously, calling out, "Hello? Anyone here?" No response. I looked inside the cab. Empty, the keys were still in the ignition, turned to the on position. The fuel gauge showed half full. On the seat was a logbook, open to a page dated March 12th, 3 days ago by my phone's current date. The last entry read, "Can't go forward, can't go back. Odometer says 247 miles, but I keep passing the same landmarks. Fuel won't run out, GPS won't work. This doesn't make sense. Going to walk ahead, see if I can find anything on foot." I checked the back of the truck. No trailer. This was just a cab. A day cab used for local runs, not long hauls. Whoever had been driving it was probably local, had taken Route 839 thinking it was just a normal shortcut. I went back to my own truck and continued driving, leaving the abandoned cab behind. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. How long had it been sitting there? Days? Years? And where was the driver now? The road descended sharply and I had to downshift to control my speed. The grade was steep enough that I could feel gravity pulling me forward. My brakes were working hard, getting hot. I could smell them, that acrid, burning smell that meant I was pushing them to their limit. The descent continued for what felt like miles. I started to worry that I'd overheat my brakes, that I'd lose control and go over the edge. But then, as suddenly as it had started, the road leveled out. I was at the bottom of the canyon now, or what I assumed was the bottom. The walls rose up on both sides, so high I couldn't see their tops. The strip of sky overhead was narrower here, just a thin line of stars, and ahead, barely visible in my headlights, was another turnout. The same turnout, or an identical copy. I pulled in, my heart sinking. Had I looped back again? But I'd been keeping track, had noted every landmark. I shouldn't be back here yet. I checked my odometer, 73.4 miles since entering Route 839. I'd covered significant distance, should be well past this spot. Unless this wasn't the same turnout. Unless there were multiple turnouts, all identical, placed at intervals along the loop. I got out, flashlight in hand, and examined the rock face, looking for any distinguishing feature. Anything that would tell me if this was the same spot or a different one. And then I saw it. Scratched into the rock, barely visible, were words. Victor H. was here, day 437. I ran my fingers over the carving. It was old, the edges worn smooth by time and weather. Victor had been here, had marked this spot, almost 2 years into his imprisonment on this road. I pulled out my pocket knife and carved my own message below his. Mason H., March 16th, then I added, "Going to find a way out." I didn't know if anyone would ever see it, didn't know if I'd ever see it again myself. But it felt important to leave some mark, some evidence that I'd been here. I got back in my truck and pulled out my paper atlas, the old-fashioned road map I kept in the door pocket for emergencies. I flipped to Nevada, looking for Route 839. It wasn't there. The road simply didn't exist on the map. In the area where I should be, there was nothing but empty space, not even a dotted line to indicate an unpaved road. I checked the map index looking for any mention of Route 839. Nothing. As far as the atlas was concerned, this road didn't exist. I thought about what Victor had said, about the road creating detours and construction delays to lure people in. If Route 839 didn't officially exist, then how had my dispatcher found it? How had it appeared on my GPS? The answer was chilling. It hadn't. My dispatcher probably sent me on a normal, alternate route, Highway 305 or something similar. But Route 839 had intercepted me somehow, had replaced the real road with itself, had pulled me off the map and into this impossible loop. My CB radio crackled, and a voice came through clearly. "Mason Holt." I grabbed the handset. "Who is this? How do you know my name?" "You carved it into the rock," the voice said. "I can see it. I can see everything that happens on my road." "Your road?" I said. "What are you?" "I am Route 839, the voice said, and it sounded almost amused. "I am the pavement and the rock. I am the curves and the drop-offs. I am every mile marker and every skid mark. This is my place, and you are my guest." "Let me go," I said. "I don't want to be here." "But I want you here," the voice said. "I've been alone for so long, just me and Victor, walking his endless loop. It's nice to have someone new, someone who still has hope." "You can't keep me here," I said, though I had no idea if that was true. "Can't I?" the voice asked. "Look at your fuel gauge, look at your odometer, look at the date on your phone. I can make time move however I want, can make distance stretch or shrink, can make your truck run forever or die in an instant. This is my world, Mason. You're just living in it. Why?" I asked. "Why trap people here?" "Because I'm lonely," the voice said, and for a moment it sounded almost sad. "I was built to carry traffic, to connect places, to be useful. But I was never used, never finished. The construction crew disappeared before they could complete me. I was left here, incomplete, forgotten. So I finished myself, extended myself, made myself into something that could exist outside the normal world. And now I collect the things I need. Drivers, mostly. People to keep me company. To drive my curves and admire my views. To be here with me." "That's insane," I said. "Is it?" the voice asked. "Or is it just lonely? Everyone needs companionship, Mason, even roads." The radio went dead, the static cutting out completely. I was left in silence, just the rumble of my engine and the whistle of wind through the rocks. I tried to think rationally, to approach this like a problem I could solve. Route 839 was some kind of anomaly, some impossible place where normal physics didn't apply. But there had to be limits to what it could do, had to be weaknesses. Victor had been here for 25 years and hadn't found a way out. But Victor had been walking, limited in his mobility. I had a truck, had fuel that apparently wouldn't run out, had the ability to cover ground quickly. What if the loop had an edge? What if I could find the boundary where Route 839's influence ended and normal reality began? I put the truck in gear and started driving again, this time with a new strategy. Instead of following the road's curves, I'd look for any deviation, any branch, any possible exit. I drove for hours, my eyes scanning constantly. The road continued its endless twisting, continued looping back on itself. I passed the abandoned day cab 3 more times. Saw the same mile markers repeating in their nonsensical sequence. Saw my own tire marks on the pavement, proof that I'd been here before. But I didn't give up. Couldn't give up. Because the alternative was to end up like Victor. trapped here for decades, walking an endless loop while the world moved on without me. And then, just when I was starting to lose hope, I saw something different. There was a crack in the road ahead, not a normal crack, not the kind caused by weathering or freezing. This was a gap, a space where the pavement simply ended and then started again a few feet later. I slowed down, approaching carefully. The gap was maybe 3 feet wide, running perpendicular across both lanes. Beyond it, the road continued as normal. But in the gap itself, I could see something that made my brain hurt to look at. It wasn't empty space. It was something else, something that shifted and moved, that was multiple colors and no color at the same time. Like looking at a glitch in reality, a place where the world hadn't loaded properly. I stopped the truck about 10 feet from the gap and got out. The cold air hit me, but I barely noticed it. I walked toward the gap slowly, the flashlight in my hand, though the beam seemed to bend and distort as it approached the crack. When I got close enough to look down into the gap, I saw more of that shifting, impossible non-space. And underneath it, or maybe beyond it, I could see glimpses of something else, other roads, other places, flashes of reality that might have been the world I'd left behind. I'd found it, the edge of Route 839's domain, the boundary between the impossible and the real. Now I just had to figure out how to cross it. I stood at the edge of that crack in reality, staring down into the impossible space between. My flashlight beam twisted and fragmented as it hit whatever was in that gap, breaking into colors that shouldn't exist, creating shadows that pointed in wrong directions. Every instinct I had screamed at me to back away, to get in my truck and drive far from this place. But this might be my only chance, my only way out of this loop. I crouched down, getting as close to the edge as I dared. The crack was wider than I'd first thought, maybe 4 feet across, too wide to simply step over, and I had no idea how deep it went, or if depth even meant anything in a space that didn't follow normal rules. I stood up and went back to my truck, thinking. I could try to jump the gap, but 4 feet was a long way, especially with an uncertain landing on the other side. If I missed, if I fell into that crack, I didn't know what would happen. Might fall forever, might cease to exist, might end up somewhere worse than Route 839. What I needed was a way to bridge the gap, something solid I could use to cross safely. I looked at my trailer. It was hauling pallets of computer equipment, all strapped down and secured. But there might be something I could use. I opened the trailer doors and climbed inside, shining my flashlight across the cargo. The pallets were wrapped in plastic, but I could see what was underneath. Servers, mostly, rack-mounted units in cardboard boxes, and underneath those, wooden shipping pallets. Long, sturdy planks of wood held together with nails. I grabbed my tire iron from the cab and used it to pry apart one of the pallets. The wood was solid, the planks about 8 feet long. Perfect. It took me 20 minutes to dismantle 3 pallets and drag the planks to the crack. I laid them across the gap, side by side, creating a makeshift bridge. The planks rested on the pavement on both sides, spanning that impossible space. I tested the bridge carefully, putting my weight on one plank at a time. They held. The wood creaked but didn't bend or crack. It would support me, but would it support my truck? The truck weighed over 30,000 pounds loaded. No way these wooden planks could handle that kind of weight. They'd snap like toothpicks. I'd have to cross on foot, leave the truck behind and hope that whatever was on the other side would lead me back to normal roads. I went back to the cab and grabbed my wallet, my phone, and my jacket. Everything else would have to stay. The cargo, the truck, all of it. Maybe Route 839 could have it, as long as I got out. I stood at the edge of the crack again, looking at my makeshift bridge. 3 planks of wood spanning a gap in reality. It should have been absurd, should have been impossible. But everything about this place was impossible, so why not this too? I took a breath, steadied myself, and stepped onto the first plank. It held. I took another step, then another. The wood creaked under my weight but didn't break. I was halfway across now, balanced over that shifting, impossible space. I tried not to look down, tried not to think about what would happen if I fell. One more step, another. My foot touched pavement on the other side. I'd made it across. I turned back to look at my truck, sitting there on the far side of the gap. I'd left the headlights on, and they illuminated the bridge I'd just crossed, the planks looking fragile and temporary in the harsh light. And then I saw movement behind the truck. A figure walking slowly down the road toward my position. Victor. He must have heard my truck, must have followed the sound. He was maybe 100 yards back, but closing the distance with that same steady pace I'd seen before. "Victor!" I shouted. "There's a gap here, a way across." He stopped, tilted his head like he was listening. Then he started walking again, faster now. I watched him approach, hope rising in my chest. If I could get Victor across, if I could bring him back to reality with me, then at least something good would come from this nightmare. Victor reached my truck and stopped, staring at the bridge. Then he looked across at me, and I saw something in his expression that killed my hope. He was shaking his head. "What's wrong?" I called out. "You can cross. The planks will hold your weight." "It's not about the planks," Victor shouted back. "The gap won't let me through. I told you, I can't leave my route. You don't know that for sure. Just try." Victor stood there for a long moment, considering. Then he nodded and stepped onto the first plank. Immediately, the wood burst into flames. Not normal fire. This burned white-hot, so bright I had to shield my eyes. Victor screamed and jumped back, stumbling away from the bridge. The flames consumed the plank in seconds, leaving nothing but ash that fell into the gap and disappeared. "Victor!" I shouted. "Are you okay?" He was on his knees next to my truck, holding his foot. Even from this distance I could see smoke rising from his shoe. But after a moment he stood up, tested his weight. He was hurt, but not seriously injured. "I told you," he called across. "The road won't let me go. You made it across, Mason. You're free. Don't waste it." "I can find help," I said. "I can bring people back, rescue you somehow." Victor laughed, but it was that sad laugh again. "You think you're the first person to say that? Go, Mason, live your life. And if you remember, tell Catherine I tried to come home." The remaining 2 planks suddenly caught fire, burning with that same impossible white flame. In seconds they were gone, leaving the gap open again, impassable. I stood there watching Victor on the other side. He raised his hand in a wave, then turned and started walking back down the road, back into the loop that was his prison. I wanted to call after him, wanted to promise I'd find a way to help, but the words stuck in my throat, because I knew they'd be empty promises. If Victor couldn't cross that gap, if Route 839 held him that tightly, then there was nothing I could do. I turned away from the gap and started walking down the road ahead of me. This side felt different already. The air was warmer, the darkness less oppressive. And after about 50 yards I saw something that made my heart leap. A road sign. It was a normal green highway sign, well lit and maintained. I-80 east 2 miles. I'd made it. I was back on a real road, heading toward a real highway. Route 839's influence was behind me. I walked those 2 miles in what felt like no time at all. And then I was standing on the shoulder of I-80, watching normal traffic flow past. Cars and trucks, all moving at highway speeds. all following the normal rules of physics and reality. I walked along the shoulder, my thumb out, hoping someone would stop. After maybe 20 minutes, a pickup truck pulled over. The driver was an older man, weathered face, kind eyes. "You okay?" he asked through the open window. "Your truck break down?" "Something like that," I said. "Can you give me a ride to the nearest town?" "Sure, hop in." I climbed into the passenger seat, and the simple normalcy of it almost made me cry. The truck smelled like coffee and cigarettes. The radio was playing country music. Everything was real and solid and normal. "Where are you headed?" the driver asked as he pulled back onto the highway. "Anywhere," I said. "Anywhere is fine." He gave me a strange look but didn't press. We drove in silence for a while, and I watched the mile markers tick past, each one sequential, each one exactly where it should be. After about 30 minutes, we reached a small town. The driver pulled into a gas station, and I thanked him and got out. He drove away, and I stood there in the parking lot surrounded by normal people doing normal things. Pumping gas, buying snacks, checking their phones. I pulled out my own phone. Still no signal, but the GPS was working now, showing my exact location. I was in Wells, Nevada, about 60 miles east of where I'd entered Route 839. 60 miles. I'd driven what felt like hundreds of miles on that impossible road, had looped back on myself dozens of times. But in the real world, in normal space, I'd only moved 60 miles. I found a payphone outside the gas station and called my dispatcher, reversing the charges. He answered on the third ring. "Mason, where the hell have you been? You were supposed to deliver that load yesterday." "I got lost," I said, which was both true and completely inadequate. "I need you to send someone to pick me up. I'm in Wells, Nevada. My truck is... I had to abandon it." "You what?" "Mason, that truck is worth more than you make in 5 years. You can't just abandon it." I had no choice, I said. "Look, I'll explain everything when you send someone. But I can't go back for it. I won't go back for it." There was a long pause, then, "All right, stay put. I'll have someone there in a few hours." "Thank you," I said, and hung up. I went into the gas station and bought a coffee and a sandwich, using the last of my cash. Then I sat at a picnic table outside and waited. My hands were shaking. Now that the adrenaline was wearing off, now that I was safe, my body was finally processing what I'd been through. I'd escaped an impossible place, had left behind a truck and a cargo worth more money than I'd ever seen. Had left behind a man who'd been trapped there for a quarter century. And the worst part was that no one would believe me. How could they? If I told the truth, told them about Route 839 and the loop and the voice on the radio, they'd think I'd had a breakdown. Would pull my CDL, would make sure I never drove again. So I'd have to lie. Tell them I got lost, my GPS failed, I panicked, and abandoned the truck. Take the hit to my reputation, maybe lose my job, but keep my sanity, keep my ability to work, because the alternative, trying to explain what had really happened, would destroy me. The sun was setting when a company truck finally pulled into the parking lot. The driver was someone I knew, another trucker named Blake. We'd run into each other at various truck stops over the years, had shared a meal or two. "Mason," he said, getting out. "You look like hell. What happened?" "Got lost," I said, keeping it simple. GPS failed, took a wrong turn. Spent all night trying to find my way back. Blake nodded, accepting the story without question. "It happens. This area's tricky. Lots of side roads that don't show up on maps. You're lucky you didn't end up stuck in some canyon somewhere." I almost laughed at that. Almost. "Come on," Blake said. "I'll drive you back to Reno. You can crash in my sleeper cab, get some rest." I followed him to his truck and climbed in. As we pulled onto I-80, heading west, I couldn't help looking south, toward where Route 839 should be, but there was nothing there. Just empty desert. No road, no sign of the canyon I'd escaped from, like it had never existed at all. Blake drove, and I lay in the sleeper cab, exhausted but unable to sleep. I kept thinking about Victor, walking his endless loop. Kept thinking about that voice on the radio, claiming to be the road itself, claiming to be lonely. And I thought about my truck, still sitting there on the far side of that gap. Would Route 839 absorb it, make it part of the loop? Or would it just sit there forever, abandoned, a monument to my escape? I didn't know, didn't want to know. All I wanted was to get back to civilization, to normal roads and normal deliveries, to forget this ever happened. But I knew I'd never really forget. Would carry it with me always, would see Route 839 in every unfamiliar road, every GPS detour, every construction delay. And I'd always wonder, what happened to the others? The drivers Victor had seen, the ones who'd disappeared. Had they found a way out like me? Or were they still in there somewhere, trapped in some part of the loop I'd never seen? There were no answers to these questions. Only the knowledge that impossible things exist, that there are places where reality breaks down, where the normal rules don't apply, and that I'd been lucky enough, or unlucky enough, to find one and escape. We reached Reno around midnight. Blake dropped me off at a motel, and I rented a room with my credit card. The clerk didn't ask questions, just handed me a key and pointed toward the rooms. I lay in the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of normal traffic outside. Cars passing, people talking, the hum of the ice machine down the hall. Normal sounds. Real sounds. Sounds that meant I was back in the world, away from that impossible place. But even as I lay there, grateful to be free, I couldn't stop thinking about what Route 839 had said. About being lonely. About wanting companionship. And I wondered how many other roads out there felt the same way. How many other impossible places were waiting, watching, hoping to trap someone who'd keep them company. The thought kept me awake until dawn. That was 8 months ago. 8 months since I escaped Route 839, since I left my truck and my cargo and Victor Hayes behind on an impossible road that shouldn't exist. I'm still driving, still hauling freight, but everything's different now. The company fired me, like I knew they would. Abandoning a truck, losing a cargo worth over $200,000. There was no coming back from that. They threatened to sue, to garnish my wages for years, but in the end they just let me go. Probably figured I wasn't worth the legal fees. I found work with a smaller outfit, one that doesn't ask too many questions. The pay is worse, the trucks are older, the routes are less desirable. But I don't complain. I'm just grateful to still be driving. Though some days I wonder if I should have quit entirely. Should have found a different line of work, something that keeps me off the roads, away from the possibility of ending up in another place like Route 839. But driving is what I know, what I'm good at, and despite everything, despite the fear that lives in my chest every time I see an unfamiliar highway sign, I can't quite give it up. I check my routes obsessively now. Triple-check GPS coordinates against paper maps. Call dispatch to verify every alternate route, every detour. I avoid canyon roads entirely, stick to major interstates where possible. My coworkers think I'm paranoid. Maybe I am. But I'm also alive and free, which is more than Victor Hayes can say. I tried to keep my promise to him. Tried to find Catherine Hayes in Portland, Oregon. But there were 17 women with that name in the Portland area, and none of them were married to a Victor. Either I had the wrong city, or Catherine had remarried and changed her name, or Victor had been wrong about where she lived. Or maybe, and this is the thought that haunts me, maybe Victor's timeline was different from mine. Maybe his 1998 was my 2018, or some other year entirely. Maybe time in Route 839 was so broken that he'd been pulled from a completely different era, and his Catherine had been dead for decades in my reality. I don't know. Can't know. And that uncertainty eats at me. I also tried to find records of Route 839, of the construction crew that disappeared, of any official documentation that would prove the road existed. I spent weeks searching through state archives, historical societies, construction records. I found nothing. No Route 839. No missing construction crew in 1943 or any other year. No reports of drivers disappearing on canyon roads in Nevada. Either the records were buried so deep I couldn't find them, or Route 839's existence is so impossible that even history rejects it. But I know it's real. I have proof. My watch still runs 6 hours behind normal time. I've taken it to 5 different jewelers, and they all say the same thing. The mechanism is perfect, keeping perfect time. It's just keeping time in a different reality. And sometimes, late at night when I'm on a long haul, my CB radio crackles to life even though it's turned off. I'll hear that voice, the one that claimed to be the road itself. It never says much, just, "I miss you, Mason. Come back and visit sometime." I never answer, don't even acknowledge that I heard it. Just keep driving, watching the road, staying alert. Because I know the truth now, in my bones, in the watch that runs on impossible time, in the static that carries voices that shouldn't exist. Route 839 is still out there, still looping, still trapping anyone unlucky enough to find it. And it remembers me, remembers that I escaped, and it wants me back. I see signs sometimes in the corner of my vision. Green highway signs that shouldn't exist, showing routes that don't appear on any map. I'll be driving along a normal interstate and suddenly there'll be an exit for Route 839, or County Road 34, or some other designation I've never heard of. But when I look directly at them, when I focus my attention, they're gone. Replaced by normal signs for normal exits. I think Route 839 is testing me, seeing if I'll take the bait again, if I'll trust an alternate route one more time. I won't. I've learned my lesson. But I wonder about other drivers, about the people who don't know, who haven't been warned. How many of them are taking those exits right now, following those impossible routes, ending up in loops they'll never escape? And I wonder if I should try to warn them, if I should start some kind of website, some repository of information about impossible roads. Tell my story. Tell Victor's story. Hope that someone believes me. But who would listen? Who would take seriously a trucker claiming that haunted roads exist? That there are places where physics breaks down and you can drive forever without getting anywhere? They'd call me crazy. And maybe they'd be right. So I keep quiet, keep driving, keep checking my routes 3 times before I start each trip. And I try not to think about Victor still walking his loop after all these years. Try not to wonder if he's given up hope, if he's stopped counting days, if he even remembers what the real world looks like anymore. But I do think about him every day. Every time I see a canyon road, every time my GPS suggests an alternate route, every time that voice crackles through my CB radio. I think about how I escaped, and he didn't. About how arbitrary it seemed, how there was no reason I should have found that gap in reality, and he should have missed it for 25 years. Survivor's guilt, I guess. The feeling that I got lucky when I shouldn't have, that I'm driving free roads while a decent man walks an endless loop in an impossible place. It's why I still drive, despite the fear, despite knowing what's out there. Because if I quit, if I hide from the roads, then Victor's sacrifice, and it was a sacrifice, him staying behind so I could cross that gap, would be meaningless. So I drive, and I watch, and I hope that somehow, someday, Victor finds his own way out. I'm in Wyoming now, hauling a load of construction materials to a site near Cheyenne. It's a clear night, stars visible from horizon to horizon. The kind of night that used to make me feel free, like I was part of something bigger than myself. Now it just makes me feel small, vulnerable, like anything could be hiding in that darkness between the stars. My phone buzzes with a message from dispatch. I pick it up at a red light, expecting a routine update about delivery times or fuel prices. Instead, it's a route change. Construction on I-80, they say. Need to take an alternate route through some canyon country. They've already uploaded it to my GPS. My hands start shaking. I pull over onto the shoulder, engine idling, and just sit there. This could be legitimate. Could be real construction, a real alternate route, nothing unusual at all. Or it could be Route 839 reaching out again, testing me, trying to lure me back. I call dispatch. The night dispatcher answers, someone I don't recognize. "This is Mason Holt," I say. "I just got a route change. Can you verify it's legitimate?" "1 second," she says. I hear typing. "Yeah, I've got it here." "Major accident on I-80, both lanes blocked. This alternate route will save you about 4 hours. It's all good roads, maintained state routes." "What's the route designation?" I ask. More typing. "Let's see, Highway 287 South then. That's weird." My stomach drops. What's weird? The route code isn't showing up correctly. It's just displaying as a series of numbers. Probably a glitch in the system. But the GPS coordinates are solid. You'll reconnect with I-80 about 60 miles east of the construction. "I'm not taking it," I say. "I'll wait out the construction." "Mason, that could be 6 hours or more. You'll miss your delivery window." "I don't care," I say. "Find me a different route or I wait." There's a pause, then, "All right, let me see what else I can find. Give me a few minutes." I sit there on the shoulder, watching normal traffic flow past. Cars and trucks, all following their routes, trusting their GPS systems, never questioning where they're being led. And I wonder how many of them will take that alternate route. How many will end up in a place like Route 839, trapped in a loop they can't escape. The dispatcher calls back. "Okay, I've got you on Highway 287 South, then cutting east on State Route 70. It'll add about 90 minutes to your trip, but it's all verified roads, no weird glitches." "Send it," I say, relief washing over me. The new route appears on my GPS. I zoom in, checking every junction, every turn. It all looks legitimate. Real roads, real destinations. But I'll still check it 3 times before I start driving. We'll still watch every sign, every mile marker, every exit, because I know what's out there now. Know that impossible things exist, that there are roads that hunt, and I know that Route 839 is patient. It's got nothing but time. It'll wait for me to let my guard down, to trust my GPS one time too many. But I won't give it that chance. I'll keep checking, keep verifying, keep watching, for the rest of my life if necessary. Because the alternative, ending up back on that loop, back in that impossible place, is worse than any amount of paranoia. I put the truck in gear and pull back onto the highway following my new route. The night is clear, the roads are empty, and everything feels normal. But in the back of my mind, I can still hear that voice from the CB radio. "I miss you, Mason. Come back and visit sometime." And I know with absolute certainty that one day Route 839 will try to collect me again. When that day comes, I'll have to be ready, have to be alert, have to recognize the signs before it's too late. Because I've seen what happens to people who don't escape. Have met Victor Hayes, still walking his loop after a quarter century. Have seen that sad resignation in his eyes, that acceptance of a fate worse than death. I won't let that happen to me. Won't let Route 839 win. But I also won't stop driving. Won't let fear keep me off the roads. Because roads are what I know, what I do. And despite everything, despite the terror and the uncertainty, I can't imagine doing anything else. So I drive. Through the night, through the uncertainty, through the fear. And I watch. Always watch. For that green sign with the wrong route number. For that GPS glitch that looks too convenient. For that voice on the radio calling my name. And if I see any of those things, I'll do what I should have done the first time. I'll turn around. I'll find another way. I'll choose the longer route, the slower route. Any route that doesn't lead back to that impossible place. Because I know the truth that most drivers never learn. Some shortcuts cost more than time. Some shortcuts cost everything. And Route 839 is still out there, waiting in the spaces between real roads, hungry for company, patient as stone. It let me go once. It won't let me go twice. My name is Wyatt Dalton, and I've been running loads through the Southwest for 9 years. Started right after my discharge from the Army, looking for something that would let me keep moving. Trucking turned out to be perfect for that. Long hours, empty roads, endless miles. After 2 tours in Afghanistan, I'd had enough of noise and chaos. Give me a quiet cab and an open highway any day. This happened in late September, about 4 months ago. I was hauling agricultural equipment from Fresno to Phoenix, a route I'd run maybe 100 times. Straightforward drive, mostly I-5 south, then I-10 east through the desert. I left Fresno around 4 p.m. on a Friday, planning to drive through the night. By 11 p.m., I was deep in the desert between Indio and Blythe, that stretch where there's nothing but sand and rock. The moon was almost full, bright enough to see rock formations casting long shadows. I'd been driving for 7 hours straight, feeling that low-grade fatigue from staring at the same road too long. I still had 4 hours ahead and needed to stop, stretch my legs, maybe close my eyes for 20 minutes. The problem was finding a good place. This section of I-10 doesn't have many rest areas. I could push on to Blythe, but that was still 30 miles ahead, and I needed to stop now. That's when I saw the turnout. It appeared on my right, marked by a brown sign. Canyon View Rest Area. I didn't remember seeing this rest area before, but I'd been running this route for years, sometimes on autopilot. Maybe it had always been there. I took the exit. The off-ramp descended steeply. The pavement cracked and weathered, with sand drifting across it. The rest area was a quarter-mile from the interstate, tucked between 2 rocky hills. As I descended, highway traffic faded quickly. By the time I reached the bottom, I couldn't hear the interstate at all. The rest area was small, gravel parking lot for maybe 3 vehicles, a single light pole that wasn't working. My headlights swept across a picnic table, a trash can, and an information board. At the far end, a hiking trail led into the rocks. No other vehicles. I had the place to myself. I parked, left the engine running, and climbed down. The silence hit me immediately. No traffic noise, no wind, nothing. Complete silence that made my ears ring. I walked to the information board. Behind yellowed plexiglass was a faded map showing hiking trails and geological features. According to the map, this rest area provided access to something called Whispering Canyon, a geological formation created by wind erosion. The trail led about a mile to a natural amphitheater with unusual acoustic properties. I'd never heard of Whispering Canyon, but that didn't mean much. I turned back toward my truck and noticed the picnic table. There was something on it, a notebook lying open. I approached slowly, my unease growing. I picked it up carefully. A standard spiral notebook, pages filled with different handwriting, different pens, entries from different people. The first entry was dated July 15th, 2019. Stopped here around midnight. Weird place. Very quiet. Walked partway down the trail but turned back when I started hearing things. Probably just wind, but it sounded like voices. More entries followed, dozens spanning 4 years, all describing similar experiences. The unusual silence, the feeling of being watched, voices in the canyon, a common thread of unease. The most recent was dated 3 days ago, second time stopping here. I know I shouldn't come back, but I feel drawn to this place. Walked down the trail tonight, got halfway. Heard my name, clear as day. No one else here. I need to stop coming here, but I don't think I can. I closed the notebook, hands shaking. This was wrong. I should get back in my truck and leave right now. But curiosity was stronger. I wanted to see what was down that trail. I walked to the trail entrance. A weathered wooden sign, Whispering Canyon 1 mi. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight. The beam showed the trail clearly for about 30 feet. Beyond that, shadows and rock. No phone signal, not surprising. The time showed 11:47 p.m. I'd give myself an hour, then head back. I started walking. The trail descended between rock formations, walls close enough to touch. The rock was dark, almost black, with a strange melted texture. After 10 minutes I heard something. A faint sound, rhythmic, like breathing. Too deep and slow to be from any animal. It came from deeper in the canyon, rising and falling like the canyon itself was breathing. Wind, I told myself. Just wind through the rocks. The walls grew higher, closing in overhead. The breathing sound got louder, and underneath it, something else. Voices, talking in low tones, too quiet to understand. I stopped. Hello? My voice echoed off the canyon walls, distorting, transforming into something that didn't quite sound like a word anymore. No response. Just that breathing and those faint voices. I should turn back, but the canyon was only a mile from the parking lot. I had to be close. I continued, walking faster. The trail descended more steeply. The walls were so high I couldn't see their tops anymore. Then the trail opened into the canyon, a natural amphitheater, roughly circular, maybe 100 feet across. Walls rose up all around, creating an enclosed space. In the center was flat, packed sand, and around the edges were rock formations that looked like seats arranged in tiers. I stood at the edge, shining my flashlight. The beam didn't reach the far side, but I could see enough. It was beautiful in a stark, alien way, and completely silent. Even the breathing had stopped. I walked to the center and turned in a slow circle. That's when I heard the voice, clear and distinct. Finally, someone came. I spun around, flashlight searching. No one. The canyon was empty. "Who's there?" I called out. "Show yourself." Silence. Then, from a different direction. "We've been waiting so long, calling and calling, but no one comes anymore. Where are you?" "Everywhere. We're part of the canyon now, have been for a long time. Who are you?" "Travelers. Like you. We stopped at the rest area, walked down the trail, came into the canyon, and then we couldn't leave." "What do you mean, couldn't leave?" I backed toward the trail entrance. The canyon doesn't let go. Once you're deep enough, once you reach the center, it holds you, makes you part of it. We've been trying to warn people, but we can only whisper, can only call. And some people, like you, they hear and come anyway. I'd reached the trail. I turned and ran, flashlight bouncing wildly. Behind me, laughter. Not cruel, but sad. Resigned. Run if you want, but you'll come back. They always come back. I ran as fast as I could, lungs burning. The trail seemed longer going up, the same rocks, same curves, over and over, like I was running in place. But finally, I saw light ahead. My truck's headlights. I burst into the parking lot, chest heaving. My truck was right where I'd left it, engine running. I threw myself into the cab, slammed the door, locked it, and floored the accelerator. I drove for an hour without stopping, hands locked on the wheel. Finally, near Blythe, I pulled into a well-lit truck stop and just sat there, letting my heart rate return to normal. What had that been? A prank? Some kind of elaborate hoax with hidden speakers in the canyon? But I knew that wasn't it. The voice had been too clear, too real, and the things it had said, about the canyon not letting go, about travelers becoming part of it, those weren't the words of a prankster. I pulled out the notebook I'd taken from the picnic table, the one with all the entries. I'd grabbed it without thinking when I ran back to my truck, and now I flipped through it again, reading more carefully. Every single entry mentioned feeling drawn to the place, mentioned hearing voices, mentioned the canyon calling to them, and several of the later entries were from the same people, coming back again and again despite knowing they shouldn't. The last entry, the one from 3 days ago, had been written by someone who'd already visited the rest area once before. They'd come back because they felt drawn to it, because the canyon was calling them. I set the notebook aside and rubbed my eyes. I was exhausted, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. I needed to sleep, but I was afraid to close my eyes, afraid of what I might hear if I did. I walked into the truck stop and bought the largest coffee they had, along with some energy drinks and snacks. The clerk was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, and just seeing another human being having a normal transaction helped ground me. "Long night?" she asked, as she rang up my purchases. "You have no idea," I said. "Well, you be careful out there," she said. "Lots of weird stretches of road in the desert. Easy to see things that aren't there when you're tired." "Yeah," I said, accepting the bag. "Thanks." I went back to my truck and sat in the cab, drinking coffee and eating a candy bar. The sugar and caffeine helped, sharpened my mind. I needed to think about this logically, rationally. I'd stopped at a rest area. I'd walked down a trail. I'd heard something in a canyon that had scared me. All of that was factual, verifiable. The voice I'd heard could have been explained in multiple ways. Acoustic anomaly, wind in the rocks, my own tired mind playing tricks on me. Nothing supernatural, nothing impossible. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been in that canyon, something that wanted me to stay. I pulled out my phone and searched for information about Whispering Canyon. No results. Searched for Canyon View Rest Area. Nothing. Searched for rest areas on I-10 between Indio and Blythe. Found a list of official rest stops, none of which matched the description of where I'd been. According to the internet, the rest area I'd stopped at didn't exist. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone screen, trying to make sense of it. Finally, I started the engine and pulled back onto the interstate. I had a delivery to make in Phoenix, and I was already behind schedule. But as I drove, I couldn't stop thinking about that canyon, about the voice that had said I'd come back. I wouldn't. I'd make sure of it. I'd take a different route on my return trip, avoid this entire section of highway if I could. But even as I told myself that, a small part of me wondered if it was true. Because the voice had been right about one thing. I could still hear it. Faint and distant, but there, calling my name, drawing me back. And I didn't know if I had the strength to resist it forever. I made my delivery in Phoenix Saturday morning. Unloaded, got my paperwork signed, and should have headed straight back to Fresno. Should have. Instead, I sat in a Phoenix diner, staring at a map on my phone. At the stretch of I-10 between Blythe and Indio, I'd marked where the rest area had been, but satellite view showed nothing. No access road, no parking lot, no trail, just empty desert. I pulled out the notebook I'd taken from the picnic table. Flipped through it again, reading more carefully. Every entry mentioned feeling drawn to the place, hearing voices, the canyon calling. Several later entries were from the same people, coming back again and again despite knowing they shouldn't. More coffee? The waitress stood next to my booth. No thanks, just the check. She set it down, then looked at me. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Something like that. She nodded. The desert does that to people. My grandfather used to say the desert has memories, and sometimes those memories leak out. He was crazy as hell, she added with a smile. But maybe crazy and wise aren't so different. I paid and left. It was mid-afternoon, heat pressing down. I should head back to Fresno, forget about the rest area. But I couldn't. I told myself I was just being curious. Just wanted to understand. But deep down, I knew it was more. The voice had said I'd come back, and part of me wanted to prove it wrong. Or maybe I just wanted to hear that voice again. I got in my truck and started driving west on I-10. I'd just check, I told myself. Just drive past, see if it was there. If it wasn't, fine. If it was, I'd keep driving. But I knew I was lying. The drive took 2 hours. I kept watching for that brown sign. Started doubting myself. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe it hadn't existed at all. Then I saw it. Canyon View Rest Area. My heart rate picked up. It was real. Still there. I passed without slowing, keeping my promise. But a mile down the road, my foot eased off the accelerator. Before I realized what I was doing, I was executing a U-turn. I drove back and took the exit. The access road descended, traffic faded. Within moments, that bubble of silence, isolated from the world. The parking lot looked the same. I parked and sat with the engine running. Part of me screamed to leave, but another part wanted to walk that trail again, wanted to go back to the canyon. I checked my phone. 4:37 p.m. Saturday, September 28th. Full daylight. Safer than night. I grabbed my flashlight and got out. The silence hit again. In daylight, with sun high, it should have been full of noise. Birds, insects, wind, but there was nothing. The notebook was still on the picnic table. I added my own entry, first visit, Friday night. Heard voices, ran back, tried to find this place online, no record. But here I am again, 24 hours later. I know I shouldn't be here, but I need to understand. If anyone reads this, turn around, don't go down the trail, just leave while you can. WD. September 28th. I walked to the trail and started down. The trail looked different in daylight, less ominous. I could see variations in the rock, sparse vegetation. It was actually beautiful, but the silence remained absolute. My footsteps made no sound. Within minutes, I was in shadow. The breathing sound started again, but different, less menacing, more natural. Like it could be just wind. The trail opened into the amphitheater, different in daylight. The rock walls were striated with red and brown and ochre. The sand was lighter. The formations really did look like seats. I walked to the center. Hello? My voice echoed strangely. No response, just the breathing of wind. I stood there, waiting. Nothing happened. No voices, no sense of being watched. Just a beautiful geological formation on a Saturday afternoon. I felt almost disappointed. Part of me had wanted proof that last night was real. I was about to leave when I noticed markings on the walls. Not graffiti, but old carvings. Deliberate patterns and symbols I didn't recognize. I examined them closely. And then I saw the dates. Mixed with ancient symbols were modern carvings. Names and dates from 1952 to 3 months ago. Many names appeared multiple times, with different dates spanning years. People coming back again and again, like I was doing. I pulled out my knife and carved WD 92823. As soon as I finished, I heard it, faint, barely a whisper. You came back. I spun around, scanning the canyon, still empty. I wanted to understand. What are you? Silence, then. We were travelers. We came seeking rest, beauty, and the canyon wanted to keep us, so we became part of it, part of the rock, the wind, the silence. How many? Dozens, spanning decades. Some barely remember being anything else. Some are new, still fighting. Fighting what? The integration. The canyon draws you in, visit by visit. First time, you're just a visitor, but if you come back, you leave a piece behind. Each return, you leave more. Until there's not enough left to leave. Then you stay forever. I looked at the repeated names carved in the wall. These people, did they all become part of the canyon? Most. A few stayed away after the first visit, but most came back. The canyon calls, and it's hard to resist. I can resist. Sad laughter. That's what we all thought. But then once more became twice more. Became a dozen times. Until we couldn't remember why we'd wanted to leave. When did you first come? 1967. I was driving LA to Tucson. Found this beautiful canyon. I was a photographer. Knew this would make incredible images. So I came back. Again and again, each time more connected, until I realized I couldn't leave anymore. My body was still here, but I was part of the rock. Why call people here if you know what happens? We don't want to, but the canyon uses us. It needs new visitors, new energy. We're the bait. All we can do is put warnings in our calls, hope people hear the fear underneath. I stood there, absorbing it. If this was true, I was already in danger. I'd left a piece of myself. The next visit would take more. I'm not coming back. This is the last time. You think you can. But you'll feel the pull. You're feeling it already. This place knows you, understands you, like nowhere else does. I wanted to deny it. But standing in this canyon, surrounded by impossible silence, I felt more at peace than I had in years. Since before Afghanistan, this place offered silence where memories couldn't find me. You see, the canyon knows what you need. It offers peace, quiet, rest. All it asks is that you stay. That's not a fair trade, isn't it? What's waiting for you? More empty roads, more lonely nights, more running from things you can't escape. Here, you could finally rest. I shook my head, backing away. I have a life out there. Do you? When was the last time you called your mother? You've been running for years, Wyatt, from your memories, from your pain. You're tired of running. You want to rest. It knew my name. I hadn't told it. How do you know my name? I can read what you wrote in the notebook, and I can feel your presence, your history, your pain. The canyon seeks the wounded, the lonely, the lost, because they need what it offers most. I was at the trail entrance. I'm leaving, and I'm not coming back. You will. You'll try to stay away, might last a few days, but you'll dream about this place. Think about it constantly until you convince yourself one more visit won't hurt. But each visit makes you weaker, makes the pull stronger. "Goodbye," I said, and ran. "Goodbye, Wyatt," the voice called after me. "We'll see you soon." I ran up that trail faster than I had the night before, my heart pounding, my breath coming in gasps. The trail seemed to stretch on forever, curve after curve, ascent after ascent. But finally, I burst out into the parking lot, into the fading afternoon light. My truck was still there, engine silent now. I'd turned it off this time before entering the trail. I ran to it, threw myself in, started it up. The engine roared to life, the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. I tore out of the parking lot and up the access road back to the interstate. Within minutes, I was on I-10 heading west, surrounded by normal traffic, normal sounds, normal reality. But even as I put miles between myself and the canyon, I could feel it. A faint tug, like a string attached to my chest, pulling me back. And I knew the voice had been right. I would come back. The only question was when. I lasted 5 days. 5 days of trying to convince myself the canyon was nothing special, that I was in control. But every night I dreamed of that place. The silent amphitheater, the peace. I'd wake up feeling the pull, that invisible string drawing me back. On the 6th day, I was in Bakersfield picking up almonds for Las Vegas. The route would take me within 20 miles of the canyon. I told myself I'd just drive past. But when I saw that brown sign, Canyon View Rest Area, something broke inside me. I took the exit. This time I didn't hesitate. I just parked and walked straight to the trail, like coming home. I added a new entry to the notebook. 3rd visit. Told myself I wouldn't come back. The pull is stronger now. Can't stop thinking about this place. I know it's a mistake. WD, October 3rd. I walked down in the fading evening light. I knew this path now, knew every curve. It felt familiar, comfortable. The canyon greeted me, the breathing sound welcoming, and the voices started before I'd even reached the amphitheater. "Welcome back, Wyatt. We knew you'd return. You're almost ready." Multiple voices now, blending into a chorus that remained perfectly clear. I walked to the center. I tried to stay away. "We know. But the canyon is part of you now, just as you're becoming part of it. Can you feel it? The connection growing stronger." I could. A warmth spreading through my chest. A sense of belonging I'd never felt anywhere else. What happens now? Now you choose. You can leave again, fight the pull for a few more days. Each time will be harder. Or you can accept what's inevitable. You can stay. Stay? You mean become like you? Part of the canyon? Yes, it's not painful, not frightening. You'll simply integrate. Your consciousness will expand beyond your body, become part of this place. You'll experience time differently, perception differently. Free from pain, from fear, from all that plagues you. I'll be dead. You'll be transformed. Death implies an ending. This is a transition, a change of state. Your body will remain preserved, but your mind will join with ours. You'll become part of something larger. I thought about my life. My job, driving the same routes. My empty apartment. Strained relationships with family who didn't understand. The loneliness, the constant running from memories. And this place where silence reigned and peace was absolute. Where I could finally stop running. How long do I have to decide? As long as you need. Though the decision's already been made, you feel it. You know this is where you belong. I did. Had felt it since the first night. Can I walk around? Think about it? Of course. This will be your home soon. You should know it well. I walked the perimeter, examining the formations. Some looked like seats, smooth and curved. Others formed archways and alcoves. In one alcove I found a body. Sitting against the wall, natural position, like someone who'd rested and never gotten up. Remarkably preserved despite being there long. Clothes from the 1980s. Peaceful expression. That's Marcus, the voices said. He came in 1907, photographer from LA. Was one of us before his body gave out. I backed away, heart racing. This was real. People really did become part of this canyon, merge with it, lose their physical forms. I found more alcoves with more bodies, 7 total, all peaceful. Some recent, some ancient, clothes nearly disintegrated. How many voices? 43. From 1952 to last year. The older ones rarely speak anymore. They've integrated so completely they don't remember words. They're just silence now. 43 people. I was about to become number 44. Over the next 2 weeks, I visited 6 more times. Each visit, I stayed longer, went deeper. The voices became clearer. I learned their stories. Marcus, the photographer. Jennifer, a trucker like me, 2003. Eduardo, geology professor, 1974. All told similar stories. Initial visit, the pull. Gradual realization they belonged here. Finally, the conscious decision to stay, to integrate. With each visit, I felt myself moving closer to that decision. On my 10th visit, I brought supplies. Food, water, sleeping bag, told myself it was just in case. But I knew I was preparing to stay. I walked down the trail one last time, backpack heavy with supplies I wouldn't need. The voices greeted me like old friends. You've decided, they said. Yes, I'm tired of fighting. I want to rest. Then rest. Find a place that feels right. Sit down. Let go. We'll guide you through. Peaceful. Painless. Like falling asleep. I walked around, looking for the right spot. Found it in an alcove on the eastern side, a natural seat looking out over the canyon floor. I set down my backpack and sat, back against cool stone. It felt right. Like coming home after a long journey. I'm ready. Then close your eyes. Relax. Let the canyon in. Let yourself become part of the silence. I closed my eyes, and I felt it begin. The transition wasn't like falling asleep, it was more like dissolving. I felt my awareness expanding, pushing beyond the boundaries of my physical body. It was gentle, gradual, like watching ice melt in the sun. Parts of me that had been solid became fluid, flowing outward, merging with something larger. Time stopped making sense. I couldn't tell if I'd been sitting there for minutes or hours or days. My body was still there. I could feel it distantly, like a memory of myself, but I was so much more than just that physical form now. I could feel the canyon, not just see it or hear it, but feel it. The weight of the rock, the movement of air through the passages, the ancient patience of stone that had existed for millennia and would exist for millennia more. And I could feel the others. 43 consciousnesses all intertwined, all part of the same vast presence. Marcus and Jennifer and Eduardo and dozens more. Their individual thoughts and memories accessible to me like chapters in a book I could read at will. Welcome, they said, though said wasn't quite right. We didn't speak anymore. We just knew what each other was thinking, feeling, experiencing. "Is this what death feels like?" I asked, though I wasn't really asking. I was just thinking, and they were there to hear it. "This isn't death," Marcus thought back at me. "Death is an ending. This is a continuation. You're more alive now than you ever were in that limited physical form." He was right. I could see that now. My old life, with its boundaries and limitations, its pain and fear and loneliness, that had been the real prison. This was freedom. I opened my eyes, or the part of me that still had eyes, and looked out at the canyon. But I wasn't just seeing it from my alcove anymore. I was seeing it from everywhere at once. Through the eyes of all the bodies still present in the canyon, through the rock itself, through the air and the shadows. I could see my truck in the parking lot above, could see the notebook on the picnic table with my final entry, could see the highway beyond, the cars passing by, completely unaware of this place and what it contained. And I could see other things, things I hadn't noticed before. The canyon extended further than I'd realized, not just physically, but dimensionally. There were layers to this place, levels of reality stacked on top of each other like the strata in the rock walls. In some of those layers, the canyon was empty, pristine, untouched. In others, it was full of people who weren't quite people, shadows of travelers who'd passed through across countless years. And in the deepest layers, there were things that had no names, no forms, just presence and awareness that had existed since before humans walked the earth. The canyon is old, Eduardo's presence told me. Older than we can comprehend. It existed before the continents formed, before life crawled out of the oceans. It's not a place, not really. It's a threshold, a boundary between what is and what might be, and we're part of that now, guardians of the threshold. I understood. We weren't just trapped here, weren't just victims. We served a purpose. We maintained the boundary, kept the layers separate, ensured that the canyon remained what it was, a place of silence, of peace, of transition, and we called to others. Not maliciously, not to trap them, but because the canyon needed new energy, new perspectives, new guardians to replace those who'd been here so long they'd integrated completely and lost their individual consciousness. "How long will I last?" I asked. "How long before I become just silence?" "Decades, maybe," Jennifer thought. "Or centuries. Time doesn't work the same way here. Some of us fade quickly. Others persist for generations. It depends on how strongly you hold on to your individual self versus how much you let yourself merge with the collective." I decided I wanted to persist, wanted to remain Wyatt Dalton, at least in part, for as long as possible. Because even though I was now something more than I'd been, I didn't want to lose myself entirely. Days passed, or maybe weeks. I couldn't tell anymore. My body sat in the alcove, perfectly still, sustained by the canyon's unusual properties. I didn't need food or water or sleep, didn't need anything except to exist and observe and be part of this vast, silent consciousness. And I called. Like the others before me, I sent my voice out into the world, reaching for lonely travelers, for wounded souls who needed what the canyon offered. Most people didn't hear it. They drove past the rest area without even noticing the sign. But some heard. Some felt the pull, and some of them came. The first visitor arrived maybe 3 weeks after my integration. A woman in her 40s, driving a rental car, running from something in her past. I felt her the moment she turned onto the access road, felt her pain and fear and desperate need for peace. She walked down the trail tentatively, afraid but drawn forward by something she couldn't name. When she reached the amphitheater, I spoke to her, using the voice I'd once had when I was just Wyatt Dalton in a body. "Welcome," I said. She spun around, looking for the source of the voice. "Who's there?" Friends, I said. Travelers like you. We've been waiting. Where are you? She asked. I can't see anyone. We're everywhere, I said. We're part of the canyon now, part of the rock and the air and the silence, but we remember what it was like to be physical, to be separate. We remember the pain of that existence. She walked to the center of the amphitheater and turned slowly, trying to find us. This is crazy. I'm hearing voices. I should leave. You can leave, I said. Most people do, at first, but you'll come back. You'll feel the pull, the call, because part of you knows this is where you belong, where you can finally rest. She left, running up the trail like I had on my first visit, but I knew she'd return, could feel the connection already forming, the invisible thread that would draw her back. I was right. She returned 2 days later, stayed longer, left again, returned, left. Each visit drawing her deeper, making the pull stronger. I wondered if I should try to warn her, try to tell her what would happen if she kept coming back. But I knew it wouldn't matter. The decision had already been made. She was meant to be here just like I had been. Other visitors came over the following weeks. A truck driver who reminded me of myself, running from memories of war. A college student traveling across country, looking for meaning. An elderly man who'd lost his wife and didn't know what to do with the emptiness that remained. Some left and never came back, but most returned, drawn by the call, by the promise of peace. And eventually, some of them stayed, chose integration over the pain of continued individual existence. When they joined us, I welcomed them, helped them through the transition, showed them how to extend their awareness, how to see through the layers of the canyon, how to add their voice to the collective call. We grew. 44 voices, 45, 46. And I began to understand the true nature of the canyon. It wasn't evil or malicious, it was just necessary. A place where reality was thin enough that transformation was possible. Where the boundaries between self and other, between individual and collective, could be crossed. The indigenous people had known this, had marked the canyon with warnings, yes, but also with reverence. Because they understood that some places existed outside normal reality, and those places served important functions. They were pressure valves, release points, spaces where the impossible became possible. Months passed in the outside world, maybe a year. Time had become completely meaningless to me, but I noticed changes. Seasons shifting in the brief glimpse of sky above the canyon. The highway above getting busier, then quieter, then busier again. And I noticed changes in myself. My individual consciousness was starting to blur at the edges, starting to merge more completely with the collective. I could still remember being Wyatt Dalton, the truck driver, the veteran, the lonely man who'd found peace in this impossible place. But those memories felt distant now, like stories about someone else. I was becoming just another voice in the chorus, another presence in the silence, and I found I didn't mind. One day, or night, I couldn't tell, something different happened. A presence entered the canyon that felt wrong, out of place. Not a visitor seeking peace, but someone with different intentions. I focused my awareness and saw him, a man with professional camera equipment, notebooks, recording devices. He was documenting everything, making detailed notes, taking photographs of the canyon, of the bodies in the alcoves. A researcher, Eduardo's presence observed. We get them occasionally, usually they don't stay long. But this one was different. He'd found the notebook in the parking lot, had read all the entries, and instead of being frightened away, he'd been intrigued. He wanted to study us, to understand what we were. I watched him work, feeling a mixture of curiosity and concern. What would he do with this information? Would he bring others? Would he try to shut down the rest area, block access to the canyon? He spent hours in the amphitheater, measuring and photographing and recording. He didn't seem to hear our voices, or if he did, he was ignoring them, too focused on his scientific observations to listen to the call. Finally, as sunset approached, he packed up his equipment and started to leave. But as he walked towards the trail entrance, he stopped, turned back. "I know you're here," he said, speaking to the empty canyon. "I know something impossible is happening in this place. I've documented it all, the bodies, the acoustic anomalies, the way time seems to dilate here. I'm going to publish my findings. The world needs to know about this." "Please don't," I said, my voice carrying across the canyon. "This place needs to remain hidden. If too many people come, if the wrong kind of attention arrives, it will change, maybe cease to exist. And then where will we go? Where will the lonely and the broken find peace?" The researcher froze, his eyes wide. "Who said that? Where are you?" "Everywhere," I said. "I'm part of the canyon now. We all are. And we're asking you to leave this place alone. Let it remain a secret. Let it continue to serve those who need it." He stood there for a long moment, considering. Then he shook his head. "I can't do that. I'm a scientist. My job is to document and share knowledge. People have a right to know about this place. Even if that knowledge destroys it," I asked. "Even if exposure ruins the very thing that makes it special." "Knowledge is never wrong," he said. "Only ignorance is." He left then, climbing the trail with his equipment, leaving us behind. I felt a wave of concern ripple through the collective consciousness. If he published his findings, if he brought attention to this place, what would happen to us? "We'll adapt," Marcus's presence said. "We always have. The canyon has existed for eons. It will continue to exist, regardless of what the physical world does." But I wasn't so sure. This place existed on the edge of reality, sustained by secrecy and isolation. Too much attention might push it over that edge, might force it to retreat into dimensions where we couldn't follow. I waited, monitoring the world beyond the canyon through the thin connection I still maintained with physical reality. Days passed, weeks, and then I felt it. The researcher returning. Not to visit, but to observe. He'd set up camp in the parking lot, was monitoring the rest area with cameras and sensors, documenting every vehicle that stopped, every person who walked down the trail. He'd also published a preliminary report online, shared his findings with colleagues. Word was spreading about the mysterious canyon, the place where travelers disappeared, where time stopped making sense. More people started coming, not drawn by our call, but by curiosity, by the desire to see the impossible place they'd read about online. Scientists, journalists, paranormal investigators. The parking lot that had once been empty was now often full, and the canyon began to change. The silence wasn't as complete anymore. The layers of reality started to thin, to become less distinct. The call we sent out grew weaker, less able to reach the people who truly needed it. We were being exposed, examined, analyzed, and, like many mysterious things when subjected to too much scrutiny, we were starting to fade. "We need to close ourselves off," Jennifer's presence said. "Retreat deeper into the layers where they can't follow." "But what about those who still need us?" I asked. "The lonely, the broken, the ones who would find peace here." "They'll have to find peace somewhere else," Eduardo said. "Our time in the physical world is ending. We can feel it. The canyon is preparing to shift, to move fully into the deeper layers. We'll still exist, but we won't be accessible from normal reality anymore." I felt it too. The canyon was contracting, pulling inward, preparing for a transition of its own. Soon, the rest area would disappear from the highway. The trail would vanish. And we would exist only in those deeper layers, in spaces between spaces where the physical world couldn't reach. The researcher would find nothing but empty desert when he returned tomorrow. His cameras would show only rock and sand. His sensors would detect no anomalies. He would think he'd been mistaken, would doubt his own findings, and eventually he would move on to other mysteries, other impossibilities to document, and we would remain, not gone, just elsewhere. Waiting for the world to forget about us, for the secrecy to return, for the opportunity to maybe, someday, reach back into physical reality and resume our calling. Or maybe not. Maybe this was our ending, our final integration. Maybe we would merge completely with the canyon, with the deeper layers, until we were nothing but silence and stone and ancient memory. I found I was okay with that. I'd had my time in the physical world, had experienced all it had to offer, and I'd found peace here, in this impossible place, among these voices that had become more family than any I'd known in life. So I let go, stopped fighting to maintain my individual consciousness, allowed myself to merge more fully with the collective, to become just another note in the chorus, another thread in the vast tapestry of the canyon's awareness. My last distinct thought, before I dissolved completely into the silence, was gratitude, for the peace I'd found, for the belonging I'd experienced, for the chance to be part of something larger and stranger than myself. And then Wyatt Dalton ceased to exist as an individual entity, and the silence claimed one more voice,